All right. So, our first unit review would be Ike, the main character of this game. Very popular main character. I think in large part due to Smash Brothers. His Radiant Dawn appearance was in Smash Bros. Because Path of Radiance and its sequel Radiant Dawn didn't actually sell all that well, either internationally or in Japan. But he was put in Super Smash Bros. Brawl because it was on the Wii when Radiant Dawn came out, so sort of got to be popular because of that. Things like Great Ether! I fight for my friends. The shit that's like not actually in Path of Radiance. And then people have a lot of nostalgia for the Game Boy Advance era and the GameCube and Wii portions of Fire Emblem sort of at the tail end of that. They use a lot of the same ideas. Whereas once we hit the DS and 3DS, it departed from that a lot. So I think a lot of people look back fondly on Path of Radiance who might not have necessarily played it in its heyday. And for that reason, Ike ends up being popular. He's also just like one of the few lords that is not literally a lord, like he's not royalty. And so yeah, being different is cool. And he's a self-insert. Like if we're being for real, you don't get to name him the way you do a Lear or whatever, but in a lot of ways, Ike serves the function in the story that I think is important for fantasy stories, of being the character who kind of serves as the audience insert in that we see things through his point of view. He has to get a lot of things explained to him that are being explained for the audience's benefit, like how Lagoos work, the different countries and stuff. And so a lot of people will, relate to him and as a result really like him. The reason I bring up how much people like Ike as a character is because I think it leads to him being massively overglazed when it comes to his gameplay performance. Because Path of Radiance is an exceptionally easy game, even by Fire Emblem standards. It's definitely top 3 easiest, like alongside Birthright and Sacred Stones. You could argue it's the easiest. I think Birthright's a little bit easier, but, it just comes down to, like, personal preference or whatever. And because it's on the easier end of the spectrum, you can, without much resistance, even on hard mode, just power your way to the end credits using whatever units you like, right? If you're a big fan of, like, Rolf, Zahark, Makalov, whatever random bench warmers, right? You can just have an entire team of low tiers, and the game will not put up that much resistance. And as such, people will have Ike be sort of their main carry. I like him because his personality's great. So I'm going to give him, the early Seraph Robe. I'm going to give him the early bonus experience. I'm going to give him a Forge or whatever. Or I'm just going to feed him a bunch of kills, right? And because of that, he snowballs and he becomes the carry because whoever you feed the most kills to ends up getting the most experience. Pretty simple formula there. And then they come away from the game like, yeah, Ike's like, top 3 units in the game. Just awesome. Phenomenal. And I think that it's perfectly fine to play the game with your favorites, but I think if we're ranking the cast against each other, you have to look at the attributes they bring to the table or what they don't bring to the table. And Ike, unfortunately, is lacking in a lot of things. His base stats actually leave a bit to be desired, despite being level 1. These aren't, like, the worst level 1 stats, but his HP, his starting HP of 19, is pretty sad. He's got a good HP growth, 75%, but each singular point of HP is actually not all that impactful in the grand scheme of things. If you want Ike to be able to stand up to punishment, you probably want to give him the first Angel Robe, and there's quite a few characters that appreciate that first Angel Robe. So already, even as early as Chapter 1, Ike is like, please give me investment. His growths are fine. He's Mr. 50 and 40, as someone in chat said. 50%, I'll just list all of his growths right now. 75% HP, 50% strength, 20% magic, 50% skill, 55% speed, which is his highest outside of HP, 35% luck, 40% defense, 40% res. So he sort of lives and dies by the coin flip. Not the worst place to be, but definitely not the best, especially considering his base stats aren't great. Like 5 defense, 5 strength, 7 speed's good. Like he'll double stuff in the prologue. but he doesn't one round while doubling, and he doesn't stand up to a ton, or not prologue, chapter 1, but he doesn't like one round while doubling, and he doesn't stand up to a ton of punishment. With 19 HP and 5 defense, like, that's Hector's HP problems without Hector's massive defense. So if Ike is facing a lot of people on enemy phase, which you want most of your Path of Radiance units to, like, do a lot of enemy phase combat just because this game is force deploy Ike. Thank you, Cynthia, for the $10 donation. I guess I'm stuck with him. I guess I'm stuck with force deployed Ike. Thank you. I appreciate that. Where was I? Train of thought, ADHD. Right. So in Path of Radiance, most maps have large enemy quantity, but low enemy quality. So you want to be facing a ton of people on enemy phase, and either chipping them or ideally killing them. In Ike's case, because of his low bulk, he struggles to do that. There's just not that much of a market for ultimately a player-phase chip bot, which is the greatest heights that Ike can sort of like aspire to from a combat perspective. So that's already not great. He does have a couple of other disadvantages, like even outside of just the raw combat stats though. He's stuck on swords, which are the second worst weapon type, or at least of the physical weapon types. You could argue tomes are worse, it's weird. But swords aren't great, like stuck at one range. Again, you want to be fighting a bunch of people on enemy phase in Path of Radiance, and Path of Radiance, more so than basically any other Fire Emblem game, really incentivizes 1-2 range. Maybe Birthright is on the same level, but so many random enemies in Path of Radiance will have javelins and hand axes, or even like, just this unit has both a sword and a bow, because paladins can have 2 weapon types. Or enemy tome users have 1-2 range, so frequently, if you're stuck using just like an iron sword, a steel sword, or whatever, enemies will attack you uncountered. And I mean, in Ike's case, he's not necessarily bulky enough to take a bunch of hits, but even in the case of like more bulky sword locked units or one range locked units or whatever, not countering foes is still, you're not helping the situation, you're not being productive, because not dying is not actually that impressive from Path of Radiance's standards. So it just becomes difficult. I'd argue bows are worse than swords. Yeah, that's why I said that swords are the second worst physical weapon type. Bows are the worst one. Pretty definitively. I guess the other thing about swords is they're lower might as compared to lances and axes, which is pretty unfortunate. I think that is oftentimes a little bit overstated, to be honest. With the forging system, you can basically fix might problems. And swords, on the other hand, have higher hit than axes and lances, which is also not a big deal. Like, again, with the forge system, you can fix the hit problems that axe users will have. So the low might of swords and the low hit of axes is not actually super impactful. I would say the bigger thing is just specifically being one range locked is very unfortunate. Being footlocked is also pretty unfortunate. Maps in Path of Radiance tend to be very big, and Cavalry gets access to Canto, which allows them to move after any action. So if you've got a 9-move Cavalry unit, right? They move 4 spaces and then attack. They can then move 5 spaces afterwards. And so that helps to do either hit and run tactics to like advance, retreat, or advance and move forward. Now infantry is not like, it's not the end of the world of your infantry. They get access to shove, which is useful for like moving people around to objectives. Ike's weight is not great at 9, but he can shove like Rhys and Soren, a lot of the magic users, and shoving magic users is nice because they can use the rescue staff. So that's like an advantage that the infantry has over cavalry. And the other thing is that infantry are the only units that can be rescued. You can't rescue mounted units in Path of Radiance. So rescue dropping is a very powerful tool. And so being able to like take advantage of that to sort of keep your inventory where you want them is nice. I would still argue that being an infantry is a pretty major downside. It's a downside you can work around by having people shove forward or by having people rescue them around or whatever, but you're committing unit actions to fixing that problem. And so, you know, that is a cost, having to spend, you know, we have both Astrid and Makalov carrying Ike around, just so he can stay on the front lines. Well, that's something that's a cost. You could have been spending those deployment slots on units who would do actual combat, right? So that's unfortunate. Ike also gets a story fixed promotion, which is still a downside. It's definitely not as much of a downside as, like, Roy and Eliwood and Hector and people who get Erica and Ephraim. People promote, like, near the end of their games. But it is pretty unfortunate. It comes at the end of chapter 17, and I tend to find that most of your main squad promotes around chapter 15, 16, 17. So the fact that Ike is forced to promote at the end of 17 means he's going to be lagging behind everyone else a little bit. It's not a ton, but it's enough that you aren't really incentivized to feed him a bunch of early game experience because there's a ceiling. You know, with other units, you know, say you've decided you want Oscar or Boyd or Soren to be your carry. You can feed them a ton of kills during the early game, or feed them a ton of bonus experience. And then have them promote early. It's very trivial to have a unit promote. Like, if you've decided, I want to do a Super Soren playthrough. Soren promotes by chapter 8, by chapter 9 at the latest, right? If you want to do, like, Super Oscar, Oscar promotes at chapter 9 or whatever. Now, that is a ton of favoritism to give those units, and in most cases, I would say it's not worth it to do that. But the fact that Ike lacks that option is unfortunate, and the fact that he's going to be promoting later than the rest of your team, I think, is also a downside. So all of those combined are, I think, things that really hold him back, and his stats are just not good enough to make up for it. He does have a couple of advantages. Ike has unique access to the best occult skill in the game, which is Ether. You could argue Soul is better. I got a couple of comments on my skill tier list pointing out Soul works at 2 range, but Ether does not work at 2 range. I can see the argument there, but Ether, I think, is just so... It's 2 attacks, one of them is Soul, one of them is Luna. So you're killing whatever you proc, and you're recovering HP. That's just such a huge thing. Especially if you find those situations to do big enemy phases with them, which again, is hard, 1-rank locked, but it's not impossible, it's hard, right? He does also get Ragnell at the end of the game. Ragnell is not only the only way to beat the final boss, but also just a really strong weapon. It basically makes the last 2 chapters free. It boosts Ike's bulk, gives him 3 defense and res, and its infinite durability, 1-2 range sword with really high might. I think it's like 12 might, 13 might, something stupid like that. So even on Maniac mode, the way that I clear the last couple of maps on Maniac mode is just undeploy everyone but Ike and Nasir, and then just go to town with Ragnell. It's kind of incredible just how much of a glow up Ragnell is. Ragnell. And I think because it's 18 might, holy fucking shit, it's 18 might! 18 might! It also gives you the Hoplong artifact. It's 5 defense, damn. It's 3 in both as Amity. Yeah, it's 5 defense. My bad. I was mistaking it for the other super good sword. Amity's great, right? Amity's really powerful. Smiley face. Amity doesn't suck. Amity doesn't have like 2 might or something stupid. But yeah, 18 might, 1-2 range. It also, this doesn't come up that often because Ike's gonna have decent luck anyway, but it negates critical hits. You can't get crit with the Ragnell. Like, it's just a Hoplong guard too, which is awesome. And it gives him a very good last impression, which I think is another part of the sort of like the Ike glazing, is like he ends the game really strong, and so you're left with a really good last impression. But it's easy to just, you gotta remember there's more than 2 chapters in the game. Like, I'm sorry, the other, what is it, 30 chapters? How many chapters are in Path of Radiance? It's like 29? I don't know. The other chapters matter too, right? If I got Ragnell when he promoted, I think he would be at the very least like 2 or 3 tiers higher than I currently have him. But yeah, that's really all. I guess we should talk about Earth Affinity right now, because if I don't mention Earth Affinity, the Glazers will, I mean, by saying that it's not the greatest thing in the world, the Glazers are already gonna lose their minds. But Earth is Ike's affinity, and people lose their minds over that, because it gives full avoid, which is 5 avoid, by the way. Supports in Path of Radiance are, by and large, very unimpactful. So, Earth gives 5 avoid. Even the, like, really good ones, stuff like Heaven or Fire or whatever, you just ignore. Like, there's just, it's really not that important. But I would say Earth is one of the lower tier of the supports, to be honest. 5 avoid, like, it is really hard to overstate how much of a nothing burger 5 avoid is. I know dodge tanking is a thing that gives the neuron activation to some people, but 5 avoid, first off, it's just not getting you anywhere in terms of dodge tanking. Like, I'm sorry, if you were going to, if you dodged an attack with a C support from Earth, you were probably going to do it without that 5 avoid. At A rank, it's 15, which is near the end of the game for most supports. What is it? Titania, that's 26 chapters together. Soren, that's 19 chapters together. Lethe, that's 14 together. Reyson, that's 11 together. Even Ranulf and Alincia, like, where it's 3 chapters and 2 chapters together, they join near the end of the game. You get the full, super awesome 15 avoid near the very end of the game. Fans will notice I've skipped someone. Don't worry, we'll get to that one. Not only that, but yeah, there's not even a lot of terrain to stack avoid in your favor. If you had multiple sources of avoid boosting, then like sure, maybe the extra 5 to 15 from Earth Affinity would matter sometimes, but you don't. But also you don't need it. Enemies in Path of Radiance have really bad accuracy, which you would think would make avoid boosting affinities actually better, because you'd be like, okay, well, if they're already inaccurate, let's give a little bit more, and then you end up like just dodging everything, right? You're already dodging almost everything, and your trained combat units are going to take, what, 7, 8, 9 attacks landing on them before they're even in danger of dying? My friend Jacob, shoutouts Casual Jacob, if you have not already, subscribe to Casual Jacob, but my friend Jacob did the math on just looking at paladins and swordmasters, because paladins tend to be like the most popular units, swordmasters are the fastest, therefore most avoid. Before factoring in anything like terrain, supports, or whatever, paladins are going to, towards the mid and end game, get around 24 to 27 speed, which is 50 avoid before considering enemy luck. Swordmasters have 27 to 30, which is even more. If you already have 50 avoid and the enemies are pulling like 80, 90 hit before factoring in your avoid, and then you knock them down to 30% into RN, and you need to get hit by 9 or 10 of them to be in any danger of dying, I'm sorry, but like, you're already immortal. You're already immortal at that point. The extra 5 avoid, 10 avoid at B, 15 avoid at A is just, it's not pushing you over a meaningful threshold. Especially when you consider that you've got other tools like Triangle and whatnot to take advantage of to get a little bit of extra. Like, it's just not doing anything for you. Now, the big one people will pop off about is Oscar and Ike, because those are, I believe it's the only support in the game where both characters have Earth. I don't think Tanith can support anyone with Earth Affinity. I'm actually gonna double check that right now. POR Tanith. I know they're each other's only Earth supports. Oh, Tanith Oscar. Yeah, Tanith Oscar. Okay, well, I mean, that one's better. because they're both at the same movement speed. The big problems I have with Oscar Ike, I mean, I've got multiple, but the biggest ones are Oscar and Ike have different movements. I think it's generally, if you want to try to squeeze value out of the low impact bonuses you get in Path of Radiance, you want it on units that have similar movement values, right? Oscar Kieran, Ike Soren, you know, Lethe and another cavalry. Something like that, right? Oscar Tanith. Oscar Tanith have similar movement values. Although I would argue Tanith Marcia is better because they're both flyers, and so they're, like, able to hang out in the same areas as each other. In order for Oscar and Ike to get their support bonuses, they need to be within 3 tiles of each other. Which means you have to now commit units to ferrying Ike around to keep him near Oscar. It also means Ike is on the front lines, which is often not a place you want him. As I mentioned, he's kind of squishy. Even after he ends up growing, he still is not the bulkiest boy in the world. Like, it's good enough, especially if you got the double earth, which is a total of 30 at A. And the fastest that you can get, it's the fastest you can get A support is, so it's 11 maps together, but Oscar misses 2 maps. So what is it, chapter 13? Chapter 14, because it's at the end of the maps. Yeah, so chapter 14 is the fastest you can get the A support between them. And that's if they're deployed, well, I guess Ike's always deployed. If Oscar's deployed on every map he's able to, you'll get it by chapter 14. Which is about halfway through the game. That's honestly not terrible by Path of Radiance standards. That's probably the first A support you're going to get. I can't think of any others that come sooner than that. And so, like, in theory, yeah, let's get that extra 30 avoid. Sure, it'll make them dodgy. 1, I'd argue it's still overkill. 2, if enemies are, like, even if you ferry Ike around, if enemies are choosing between Oscar, who likely has 1-2 range, either a javelin or a hand axe, and therefore can counter them, or Ike, who doesn't, and therefore cannot, they'll attack Ike, and, like, I don't care if Ike dodges. He's not making progress. He's not attacking people. You don't want him baiting people. Enemies are not threatening in Path of Radiance. Like, oh boy, I dodged an attack that would have dealt 4 damage to me, and then I didn't counter and kill him, so now I have to deal with this guy on player phase. It's counterproductive. I'd much rather just get the 15 avoid from Oscar Kieran, as opposed to the 30 from Ike Oscar, and then just, like, have Oscar and Kieran hang out near each other because they're both calves. Or if you really want the 30 avoid, like, wait for Tanith. Tanith's fucking phenomenal. Do Oscar Tanith, and then, like, they can get the 30 avoid, and you can convince yourself that, like, no, I swear, if I hadn't dodged all those 3 damage attacks, I would have been dead. In general, it's not even just an Earth support thing. Like, all of the supports in Path of Radiance are just so low impact. Theoretically, Heaven could be good. Like, it's 5 hit per level, which you could use to push, like, Boyd or someone up to a 100% accuracy, which is a pretty big swing, right? Changing from 80% accurate or 85% accurate to 100 is nice. But in practice, even that doesn't matter because just forge hit on a weapon. You get so much money. And there's no supports that give crit avoid. I saw someone in chat say stacking attack and defense is good, and I would agree if it, again, weren't for the fact that Path of Radiance, all of them round down. So all the attack and defense ones give 0.5, which means on their own, they actually give nothing at C rank. Which is so stupid. You have to, like, if you want water, which gives attack and defense, if you want it to actually matter, you have to pair it with someone that is giving either defense or attack on their own. So, like, water fire gives 1 attack, but no defense at C. The rounding down is so obnoxious. It's like, why did they do it like that? I hate the gameplay impact of supports in Path of Radiance. But on the other end of things, the fact that they don't, like, help you at all means you can just pair up who you want from a story perspective. And honestly, I think that's probably better. Cause, like, I don't know, like, the gameplay in Path of Radiance, I don't think is actually particularly good. I guess on that topic, on the topic of getting weighed down by weapons, we should talk about Boyd, since he's the only one who cares. As as I said, Boyd is, unfortunately, since the way that the way down works, he is unfortunately just shy of doubling 0 AS enemies. He can't double anyone until he gets 1 point of strength or speed. And so having a bit of a speed hole to climb out of is annoying. I think it is sometimes overstated, but it's also, like, the Boyd fans will sometimes understate it. Will sometimes be like, it doesn't actually matter. You're exaggerating how bad it is. Like, if Boyd misses a speed or strength level up, it's, like, tragic. And if he misses 2 in a row, it's over. Like, it's just over. And that's really unfortunate, because I think Boyd has the makings of a very strong infantry unit. You'll notice he has, like, good strength to start out, very good HP, 30 HP. His defense is 5, so it's tied with Ike, and he's got an even worse defense growth. I guess I should read his growths. 75% HP, 60% strength, 5% magic, doesn't matter, 50% skill, 45% speed, 35% luck, 25% defense, 25% res. Really high strength growth. He uses axes, which are the best physical weapon, probably the best weapon in Tallius. And just, like, decent base stats alongside the sort of Captain Coin Flip growths, with the exception of, like, strength being notably above. Like, 60% I think is good enough to not necessarily be Captain Coin Flip. The only unfortunate thing is that, like, he really needs to hit strength and speed as often as possible. For the first few maps. Like, once you get into sort of the early mid-game, stuff like, once, spoilers, once Grail dies, right? If Boyd has hit all of his strength and speed at an appropriate time during, like, the prologue, he's probably fine, he's probably set. But in those early chapters, it can sort of work as a reverse snowball, where, like, you miss your first strength level up, you miss your first speed level up, and then it becomes harder to double, and so you gain less experience because you get less kills, and so you gain less level ups, and then it's even harder to double, so you gain less experience, less skills, and it can be, like, a big problem. Strength is pretty much his speed, so missing both is really bad. Yeah, you can work around missing one, which is usually going to be the speed. Missing both in a single level up is, like, really tragic. And missing speed too many times, or missing both too many times, is, like, it's Jover. Like, it just becomes too Jover for him. But as long as that doesn't happen, like, he'll end up being solid. He's still in infantry, so he's still got that sort of low move, no canto problem, but he uses axes. Axes are a good weapon type. He's got a good stat spread. His low defense can sometimes be annoying, although it's offset a little bit by his high HP. He ends up with sort of, like, the Largo stat spread, which I think is actually pretty bad. Like, I don't like Largo's stat spread. So maybe that's a reason to ditch him at the end of the game, but as long as he's leveling well, like, he'll probably be fine. And he's got nearly perfect availability. Like, he misses some of the prologue chapters. Boo-hoo. He starts with Tempest, which is part of his other issue, and that is his tragically low skill base. 50% growth is nice, but 4 skill base is bad. It's bad. And Iron Axe has 75 hit. This means he has 79 hit before factoring in biorhythm. I did a whole video on biorhythm and how it ends up hurting Boyd more than it helps him. But you'll notice here, right? Like, he's got 82 hit. These are enemies with no avoid, I'm pretty sure, right? 0 avoid. 5 avoid. Like, this is just not... this is not good for him. How many foot units can you afford in Path of Radiance late game? I mean, you get a lot of deployment slots. I think you can afford, I mean, as many as you want. It's an easy game, but... yeah. I haven't mentioned Boyd's promotion to Warrior. It's mostly just stat gains. But he does get bows, and that does let him participate in a triangle attack, which is an automatic hit, automatic crit, alongside Oscar and Rolf. Both Oscar and Rolf need to be promoted. And you have to do a base convo, so they have to promote before, like, chapter 19, I think? I think the base convo isn't... You get... there's one convo in 13 that doesn't actually do anything, but you have to do the 13 convo to get... I think it's the 19 one. It might be chapter 18, but I'm, like, 90% sure it's chapter 19. And Oscar needs to get bows. Boyd, Oscar, and Rolf can then do a triangle attack from 2 range. I think it's the only 2-range triangle attack in the series. Because for the most part, they don't go off if they're at 2 range, like with javelins or whatever. So that's pretty cool. It's not necessary. Like, I guess that fixes Boyd's accuracy. It's overkill even for Maniac mode, yeah. But it's funny. I guess what you could do is give Gamble to one of the brothers, and then triangle attack with Gamble, since it's guaranteed to hit anyway, but then you're guaranteed to crit anyway, so you can pretend that the Gamble helped you, but actually you were guaranteed to crit anyway. But yeah, it's, you know, he's fine. Like, I think Boyd is one of the better projects for the early game. If you want to raise an early game unit, you can do a lot worse than Boyd. I would argue the only combat unit who's better than Boyd to raise in the early game is his brother, Oscar. And this gets down to Path of Radiance units are so boring to evaluate because it's best to use 3. I don't think it's best to use just 3, but I do think Path of Radiance unit strength is often very boring to evaluate because there's that sort of, there's this stereotype of like, elitists say all cavalry is good, all infantry is bad. And I think some people do look at every Fire Emblem game like that, right? And I would say that's an incorrect assessment. And I would even say in Path of Radiance, that's an incorrect assessment. But Path of Radiance is the game where that is the closest to just the truth. Where if you want to look at like a tier list, if you just sorted by mounted versus not mounted, you would be pretty close to what I think is like the Path of Radiance tier list, right? And I mean, that's the reason why Oscar's the best early game trainer, is he's mounted. His stats are a little bit worse than Boyd. His growths are about on the same level. He's got worse strength and HP growths, but everything else is like about the same. 55% HP, 45% strength, 20% magic, which doesn't matter. 50% skill, 45% speed, 30% luck, 35% defense, and 30% res. I guess I should clarify, the magic doesn't literally not matter. There's the Flame Lance and the Bolt Axe for Boyd. But like, it doesn't. Like, you don't care about physical units magic stats in this game. Yeah, Oscar is just gonna be generically good cav. Upon promotion, paladins can choose a second weapon type. Oscar starts with lances, which are the second best weapon in the game. If you want to go, like, quote-unquote optimal, you always give axes to your paladins, but, like, you can't go wrong. No matter what weapon you give them, they'll be fine. Mounted unit with well-rounded stats in a game with weak enemies, like, it's a very straightforward, formula for success, right? Doesn't not deploying units give more bonus experience? Only on 3 maps, all of which are defend maps, and it's like 20 extra experience per empty deployment slot. It's not fucking worth it. Like, I'm sorry, low manning chapter 8 is unhelpful. You can meme and say like, I'm undeploying Mia because the bonus experience you get for not deploying her is better than anything she does. But that's, let's be honest, just a way to make fun of Mia. But yeah, it's only the defend maps. So, Chapter 8, Chapter 14, which is the one where you defend Sanaki's boat, and... Are those the only defend maps? Because the survive map in the forest doesn't count. That doesn't give any bonus experience for low manning. I think it's just those 2 maps. Yeah, it's literally just those 2 maps. And the reason is because normally it's turn count that determines BXP, but defend maps have a fixed turn count. So they instead made it undeploying. But in all other chapters, undeploying does not give you any extra BXP. It's only the defend maps, and only those two, because in the first defend map, you're forced to deploy everyone, in the Grail one. But yeah. Oscar's bow is fine. Trading axe ring takes forever. He can shoot down flyers. He'll do more damage to flyers with axes than bows, and I'm not joking. 2 times effective damage is a scourge upon the earth. I also don't think you need to train axe rank, like forged hand axe. Like, you just do forged hand axe. You can give Oscar whatever weapon you want, like to the point of he'll be fine with whatever. But axes are just the best. Like, if you're looking for the best one, it's axes. If you're looking for the most fun one, follow your heart, whatever your heart says, right? And then bows are for the triangle attack, which we will be giving him bows in this run, because as I mentioned, I need footage of the triangle attack. So, you know, and it's fun. Like, I think the triangle attack is fun. I fucking love triangle attacks, and Rolf is like my favorite unit in the game. So, the triangle attack, right? Like, it's awesome. But, like, if you're trying to just optimize, give access to everyone, and then be boring. Like, 5 axe paladins, Jill, Marcia, Tanith. The most boring playthrough on Earth. But, like, it is technically the best thing you can do. Anyway, Oscar's good. The sort of, like, I guess the question of Oscar is, how much do we train him in the early game versus rushing to beat maps with Titania to get the most BXP? And in my opinion, the answer is you can do both. You have time to do both. You don't have time to baby him and get him to like level 12 by the end of the first 7 chapters. But like, you can get Oscar a decent number of levels. You can also do that to Boyd. You can also do that to Ike. And still hit all of your BXP caps. So like, some people, and I've made this argument in the past myself, like I say some people, I'm guilty, past Danny. The argument of like, well, training Oscar, you don't actually train him, so he's under-leveled. I think that's a misnomer. I think that Oscar will be fine. I think Oscar will be on a fine level. But yeah, Oscar's good. As I mentioned with Ike, I don't find the Earth Affinity to be, the fucking quote-unquote game-breaking, busted thing that people seem to think it is. I forgot Chapter 5 is a defend map. Yeah, but you're forced to deploy everyone. You cannot undeploy characters in Chapter 5. Like, you literally can't. The game doesn't let you. But yeah, cavalry good. Who'd have fucking guessed? And like, if cavalry's good, if cavalry's good, paladin better. Meet Titania. Meet Titania. This is Path of Radiance's Jagan. She's one of the strongest Jagans in the franchise. She's the one that, she alongside Seth were the 1-2 punch that managed to convince people, actually, maybe these pre-promotes are good. And yet I still get comments about how she's an EXP thief. So these stats are pretty good, pretty ridiculous for her join time. Her growth rates are also, like, good. 80% HP, 45% strength, 25% magic, 60% skill, 50% speed, 45% luck, 40% defense, 45% res. These are all better than Oscar's, with the exception of strength, which they are tied at. The biggest thing that sort of like stops Titania is the EXP curve is not super kind to her. She, unlike Seth, does actually have to suffer from pre-promoted EXP. For anyone who doesn't know, Seth can actually cheat pre-promote EXP because the first 8 chapters of Sacred Stones, the boss kills, just give a fixed experience. So Seth doesn't actually have to get pre-promote experience. He just kills bosses and gets regular experience. Titania doesn't get that privilege. She's still very, very good. I think that Titania is close to the sort of ideal for a Jagan, in that she starts out dominant, and over the course of the game, others will catch up to and surpass her. I find that by the late game, Titania is the worst unit you are willing to deploy. She's better than everyone you've benched, but she's probably weaker than everyone else you've got alive. And I think that's the perfect place for a Jagan to end, because if you want to, you can just bench her in the mid game, train someone else up, and they'll probably be better than her. But it's more effort and probably not worth it. I think she's fine. I think she's fine in the late game. I think the people who say, like, she's still the best unit in your army in the late game, I don't understand that take, because, like, everyone surpasses her, right? But she's also not, like, unusably bad or anything. And she very much goes against, the like, she beats the EXP thief allegations, because the way this game's bonus experience works is on almost every map, with the exception of the defend maps, you get bonus experience based on meeting certain turn count thresholds. And Titania is going to be the easiest way to get to those turn count thresholds. And so what you do is you spend the turns training up your projects, having them do sort of side objectives, self-improvement training. And meanwhile, have Titania and maybe one other unit charge the objective. Then Titania clears the map, gets a ton of bonus experience, and you feed that bonus experience to whoever your Blorbo was. And now suddenly your Blorbo's actually gotten more experience total than they would have if you dragged out the map babying them. Because they've gotten experience doing side objectives, and then they get bonus experience from Titania doing the main objective. And the bonus experience you get from those turn counts is almost always going to be more than the pittance you would have gotten from having your, special Blorbo do their little project. 21 strength on average at 20 pro mode is very meh. Yeah, but it's still enough. I think it's still enough, right? Like, so I've done so many runs of Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Path of Radiance was my first Fire Emblem game. One of my proudest achievements is using transfers. I have transferred the entire support library from Path of Radiance to Radiant Dawn. And for anyone who doesn't know, the way you do that is by beating the game with every support unlocked. And you can only unlock 5 supports for each character per file. Which means you have to do playthroughs for, like, to do every single pairing, right? So I've transferred the whole support library. I've also brought every character in Radiant Dawn to the tower on hard mode, without Laguz Royals. I grew up drinking Tellius like a fucking smoothie. Yeah. Tellius was my childhood. And, like, I've fallen off on Path of Radiance specifically now. I still love Radiant Dawn. Game's goated, even though it sucks. The game's goated, even though it sucks. But Path of Radiance, like, I've got a lot of nostalgia for. It is, unfortunately, like, I'm less tolerant of its flaws now than I was as a kid, but I've still got nostalgia for it, right? I should do the unit review before I forget. So Rhys, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quote-unquote right. I got a comment from someone that said they know people in real life with this name, and they pronounce it Rhys. I have a cousin with a name spelled this way, R-H-Y-S, and he pronounced it Rhys, which is why I call it Rhys, right? Like, I just thought that was how people pronounce it. So maybe different people pronounce it different. I don't know what the intended one is. But regardless, Rhys is your first staffer, one of very few staffers. The only native staffers are Mist, Rhys, and Elincia. Although you can also promote Soren, Ilyana, and Tormod to get staff rank. So in that respect, he's got a very rare niche. You're probably always going to want one staffer. I think in general, staffing in Path of Radiance is pretty weak. Your units tend to be pretty tanky, even without staff healing. And there's not that many useful utility staves. Restore is good on some maps where there's enemies with status staves. And rescue is good if you're trying to do, like, rescue strats. But there's no warp. Barrier is nice, but you don't really need it. Like, mages are kind of pushovers anyway. So there's not that many stabs that you get that are, like, super useful. And status stabs, the hit rates are just not great, and it's easier to just kill enemies than status them. But you probably want at least one. because you get a lot of stealable physics. You probably want to like heal people, restore people is really nice. It saves turns for your combat units. Yeah, if someone needs healing, it's better to have a staffer than a vulnerator. I just think most of the time, your units don't actually need healing, or don't need that much, which is why they're sort of diminishing returns, but you probably want one. And the two primary ones, Mist and Rhys, offer different benefits. Rhys starts with like really good stats. Like as a level 4 priest, 10 base magic is kind of ridiculous, and he got a 60% magic growth. Rhys has the highest average magic of any unit in the game, because he's tied with Soren for the highest magic growth, and he's just got a better base. Now obviously being on staff experience means like he's gonna grow slower, but you can just give him bonus experience in order to make up for that. And the nice thing is, because Rhys's primary role is a staffer, you don't need to early promote him. Like, you don't need to immediately... For other units that want a lot of BXP, they usually want it as soon as you get them, right? If you want to give a lot of BXP to, like, Marcia, Oscar, Soren, Boyd, you do it, like, in the first chapter you can. For Rhys, he doesn't really need a ton of BXP until you want to get his physic range high, or his rescue range high, or whatever, right? So he can afford to just not get the early BXP and still eventually get a bunch in the mid game and like take advantage of those growths. You could also master seal him. I don't think you need to, because like the only benefits to promoting him are, I guess, an extra point of move and light magic access, but Rhys's combat is gonna be abysmal. Notice that 0 base defense, 21 HP. His growths don't help with that. He's got 40% HP growth, 5% strength, which literally doesn't matter, 60% magic, 50% skill, 40% speed, 50% luck, 25% defense, and 55% res. Tomes are bad in Path of Radiance. Like, mages are just not particularly good at combat. And Rhys is very, very frail, so he has a bad weapon type, good magic stat, but bad weapon type, bad bulk. He shouldn't be doing combat, he should just be staffing people, but he'll be like, from raw numbers perspective, the best staffer. So if you just want really long physic range, you just want really big heals, he's your man, right? He also is the easiest one to raise staff rank on, not only because he starts with D rank staves in chapter 2, so he'll hit like Ashura staff on time easily, but since light and staff are the same ranks, Rhys is the only unit in the game who can use an arm scroll to raise his staff rank, because arm scrolls raise the rank of your currently equipped weapon, and you can't equip staves. So mages and Mist can't use an arm scroll to raise their staff. Mist uses it for swords, mages use it for whatever tomes they want, right? Rhys, on the other hand, because light and staves share a rank, one, it means upon promotion, he can use higher rank light tomes. Not that that helps much, because Purge comes super late, it's on the mountain map, and Nosferatu's bad, like, because it's a tanking spell on the guy who, story-wise, is so frail the fever knocks him out for weeks, right? Like, he's not enemy facing with it, but that's nice. And then, like, the bigger thing is you can just equip a light tome and he's able to raise his staff rank, which is cool. I don't think he needs to, because he'll hit Ashura staff, which is the S rank staff, in a timely manner anyway. Like, he'll probably hit S rank staffs before you get the S rank staff, but it's nice. Enemies will double him because of his low strength. Right, because he has low strength. I guess when I said the strength doesn't matter, that's a lie. The 5% strength on 0 base does matter. It means he's even slower than he appears, and he already seems tragically slow, right? So like, he should not be doing combat. He really shouldn't. It's weird as the only light user. I could have sworn they gave that to sages. Sages get to choose between stabs and knives. They do not get light. I think you're confusing this with Sacred Stones. In Sacred Stones, sages get stabs, light, and anima. But in Path of Radiance, the only light magic users are bishops, which is the promoted priest class. You get the S-rank light tome with funny stealing. Only through exploits. Like, that one does rely on an exploit. There's a glitch that causes it to get unequipped. But also, that's even later than the Ashura staff. So I don't understand how that I don't understand how that undercuts the idea of the rank, right? Like, it's even later than the Ashura staff. He'll hit it on time. But it is like a fun fact, right? To say that he can actually gain staff rank from it. And I guess if you're doing some sort of challenge run that involves benching units, like rotating, like determining your deploys based on a wheel, or an Iron Man and you benched him but then missed dies, being able to pull him off and like power him up that way is nice. In general though, I think just the really high base magic stat is doing it for me. Like, that's his biggest thing. Before we dive in though, let's do our unit reviews. I'll do Gatrie first, cause spoilers, when Grail dies, Shinon and Gatrie abandon you. And they will eventually come back at different times, but it means that even though they're like technically early game units, they don't really function the same as other early game units. You can like train either of them in these like first few chapters, but they don't really feel like early game units when like Shinon rejoins you halfway through the game, right? So Gatrie is your sort of standard armor knight. Low move, even lower move than regular infantry. He's got armored movement, so he only has 5 move. You'll notice that's the same as Rhys, our priest, because mages also have armored movement. As compared to Boyd, who has 6, and then Shinon is promoted, so he has 7. When Gatrie promotes, he'll get 6, right? So that's unfortunate. It's sort of the infantry problems, but exacerbated. His stat spread is also not great. He focuses on strength, defense, and HP to the detriment of speed and skill. Skill is pretty fixable by just giving him a plus hit forge, and he uses lances. Like, it's not as bad as it would be with axes, and they get swords on promo if you like really care about the accuracy. But losing speed sucks. It means he doesn't double. Basically means he does half as much damage as other people. The defense is nice. It means he can be literally invincible against large swaths of enemies. But since most of your other units are functionally invincible because they have to get hit by like 10 enemies to die, I think that that's not as big a deal. I think it's not as big a deal as compared to like the not being able to double, right? Like, I think it's a pretty big downside. His growths they lean in the direction where you would expect from his bases. He's got an 80% HP growth, 55% strength growth, 5% magic, 55% skill, 25% speed, 25% luck, 60% defense, 30% res, and 0 res base means he is vulnerable to mages, but with that fat HP and just how like low impact mages often are, it's kind of like no big deal. He can still take 1 or 2 mage attacks as long as he doesn't get crit by a thunder mage. I guess the other thing worth mentioning, and I should have mentioned this when it came to Oscar and Titania, is the Night Ward is an item that exists that you get about halfway through the game, or about a quarter of the way through the game. And it can be equipped by paladins or armor knights. It boosts, I believe, your defense and res, but the bigger thing is it boosts your speed growth. And so you can give that to Gatrie to try to like help fix his speed growth, but I'd rather give it to someone with a good speed growth to make it a great speed growth, rather than a abysmal speed. Well, he's got a bad speed growth, and it becomes like okay, right? POR Night Ward. Yeah, 2 defense, 2 resistance, 30% extra speed growth. So it gets him from 25 to 55, which like, okay, that takes it from bad to good, right? But I'd rather like give it to Oscar or Titania or Kieran or someone, right? And take Oscar's 45, turn it to 75, right? That's a good growth, turns it great, right? Nightward also works for soldiers and halberdiers. Right, I forgot. Nephenee and Devdan stonks rising. I know Nephenee fans will defend her, but you know, she's not very good. Ultimately, Gatrie is like, I think he ends up being a fine filler unit in the mid game. And if you want to train him up, like, he will very much be the I don't die to anything physical guy. And that's like, there's worse places to be than that. It just sucks that he's on armored move. I think that's just the most unfortunate part of him is like, when everyone basically doesn't die, being the guy who super doesn't die isn't that special. And the downside of like lower movement, higher weight, so like he can't get shoved around as easy, although he can shove people more easily. It's just like, it's whatever, right? You can certainly do worse than Gatrie, but you can do a lot better as well. This is the worse than Gatrie, by the way. Shinon gaslights you into thinking he's gonna be like Jagan number 2, because he's a sniper. That's a promoted class, right? His stats are fucking abysmal. Like 9 strength. He's got worse stats than Titania, which like, oh no, I've got worse stats than Titania. But the reason his stats are abysmal is that when he rejoins you is halfway through the game. He joins you in chapter 19 out of 28? So 2/3 of the way through the game. And like, he's not gaining experience during the Grail Mercs arc, so he's probably just gonna have these stats. Now he does actually have really good growths. 75% HP, 65% strength, 20% magic, 70% skill, 65% speed, 35% luck, 50% defense, 40% resistance. So he's got really fucking good growths. Like, those are some of the best growths in the game. Making him, of course, a Shinon archetype. The pre-promote growth unit. But, even then, it's not worth it because he's stuck on bows. Bows are easily the worst weapon type in the game. I think bows are even worse than tomes. And they're worse than swords. Like, they're worse than everything. The big thing is you can't really enemy phase with them that well. As I said, most of your units, you're going to want to do the majority of your combat on enemy phase, fighting a bunch of people, like fighting hordes of foes. And Shinon just isn't doing that because he's 2-range locked. He can't counterattack melee enemies. You can find situations for him to like counterattack other bow enemies or tome enemies or anything like that. But for the most part, he's just not going to be enemy phasing. Knives are worse than bows. Maybe this is a hot take. I think knives are better than bows. They're worse than swords and tomes, though. I'll give you that. I forgot about them. But they're better than bows because they can attack at 1 range. I think being able to attack at 1 range is better than being 2-range locked. He rejoins in 18, not 19. No, he doesn't. He rejoins in 19. He's a boss in 18. He's a red unit in 18, but you can't recruit him on 18. You gotta kill him on 18 in order to recruit him on 19. He rejoins in 19. But, yeah, just bow's bad. Like, bow's bad kind of explains it all. The other thing is that, so in addition to, like, only doing 1 attack on player phase, and probably not a kill, because look at his stats, right? The sort of appeal to bows is they can deal effective damage to flyers, of which there's not actually that many. There's wyverns. Actually, no, there's a decent number of wyverns in the late game. If bows were actually good against wyverns, if they were actually the weapon type you want to use against wyverns, then that would be one thing. But effective damage in Path of Radiance is 2 times, not 3 times. So the basic iron bow has 12 might against wyverns. Steel bow has 18 might against wyverns. And like, that's good. Like, that's a good high might weapon. But just use a fucking forged hand axe or something. Use a weapon with actual, like, use a unit with actual strength. And just a weapon with good might. If this was 3 times effectiveness, meaning this would be like 27 might, then maybe you might have a case for like on maniac mode, shooting down scary flyers or something, but with just 2x, even on maniac mode, he doesn't have a niche where you like might actually want a player phase delete button. He just isn't that. Sniper's got a crit bonus though, which is pretty cool. So like if you want to do player phase stuff, I guess using the it's not displayed, is it? He passively has it, but that's why he's got 22 crit right now, is he gets plus 15 crit. It's not good. Like the 15 crit, that's the thing about 15 crit bonuses, is they're scary on enemies. Like it makes enemy snipers terrifying, because if they crit you, then you just like you shit your pants, like Donald Trump did on that press conference yesterday. But if you are trying to rely on critical hits, you can do like crit stacking stuff. Well, we don't have crit supports in this, but like a killer weapon plus swordmaster or sniper plus wrath can like get you there. But like, I don't know. I don't think the 15 crit, I really don't think 15 crit is very good, especially in this game where you can't even crit stack with supports. But like, in general, it's just much scarier in the enemy's hands than it is in the player's hands. And that's unfortunate. Shinon also has Provoke. This is mostly a flavor skill, because it attracts enemies to attack him instead of others. But since he's 2 range locked, most people are going to attack him instead of others anyway, because, like, they want to attack people who can't counter them. So, like, I don't know. It's a good flavor skill, because it's, like, a clever reference to how he's such a fucking asshole. Everyone wants to smack the shit out of him. But I don't think it's super helpful, because he would already be attracting attacks. I also don't think Provoke is, like, reliable in Path of Radiance. It, like, adjusts things to a vague extent, and I've been told that we've, like, found a way to make it reliable now, and it has to do with, like, 1-2 range units and stuff. I don't know if that's accurate or not. If it is, like, you can probably do some stuff with it. But in Shinon's case, like, I think they're going to attack him anyway. He's 2 range locked. So maybe I'm wrong. I guess I'll do some testing to figure it out. Cause we're using him for these chapters. So, Soren! Always lost in your books. Well, book, singular. And that's a big part of the problem. So Soren is a mage. As I've mentioned a couple of times prior, mages are not particularly good in Path of Radiance. They've got armored movement, which sucks. And then they have tomes, which are a 1-2 range weapon type, but have abysmal might. Wind has 2 might, fire has 3, thunder has 4. And then as you go up to, like, the L's, well, I guess it's just the L's, and then Thoron. Like, there's not even that many good variants of tome weapons. But they get, like, a little bit better, but they're, statistically, they're far behind the physical equivalents. This is often the case in Fire Emblem, and usually it's made up for by the fact that enemies have low res. And in these early chapters, the game might gaslight you into thinking that that's actually the case. Like, look, 6 defense, 1 res, that's a difference of 5. 6 defense, 2 res, that's a difference of 4. 5 defense, 1 res, that's a difference of 4. Difference of 6. Even here, actually, it's kind of obvious that, like, basically, the difference between defense and res is usually, like, 4 or 5. At most. And some classes, like Paladins, or, like, weirdly, a lot of generals, like general bosses, sometimes just have better res than defense. It's weird. But mages are still hitting on the weaker defensive stat, but it's no longer the case where, like, a 20 defense enemy will have 0 res. Instead, a 20 defense enemy has 15 res. So now the fact that mages have a weaker weapon type is actually going to hurt them. Because strength is what offsets weapon weight, mages are also weighed down a lot more often. Soren with a base 0 strength and a 5% growth is basically always going to be weighed down by every weapon. Now tomes are lighter than physical weapons, but whereas a unit like Boyd, right, will eventually get 12 strength and never get weighed down by the Iron Axe, Soren's always going to get weighed down by like Elwind, which is unfortunate. His stats are like, I mean, it's what you expect out of a mage, right? He's incredibly physically frail. 18 HP and 2 defense means he can get 2-rounded on this map, which is impressive. It's impressively frail. His speed is like actually pretty good, and his magic, I mean, his magic base isn't great, but he's got 60% magic growth, so he's tied with Rhys for the highest magic growth, and he's a level 1 mage. So if you want to, you can sort of train him up, and he's got, of the mages, because you get 3 project mages, Ilyana, Soren, and Tormod. Of them 3, he's the only one whose average stats are actually better than Calill, the pre-promote you get. So if you want to train a mage up, he's probably the best target, but he also needs the most in terms of like babying and bonus experience. And the really annoying thing, right, is because he joins early. He joins right here in chapter 4, and he's around in chapters 5, 6, and 7. 6, 7, I'm a young person. But he's only got 40 uses of wind, because you do not get another tome until midway through chapter 7. I would say close to the end of chapter 7, like about halfway through, maybe 2/3 of the way, depending on how you route the map. So he can only do 40 attacks, and let's be honest, because he's not dealing enough damage to one-shot, it's 20 rounds of combat, because he's heavily relying on doubling to deal, like, decent amounts of damage. Now, he does have Adept. Adept is a speed % chance to get an extra attack, so, like, he can triple sometimes, like in RNG, and, like, that's cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't save weapon durability, like it's the same amount of weapon durability spent. So he's in this weird spot where he wants you to train him up in the early game, but there's a cap to how much you can train him. So you can't actually like give him the babying he wants beforehand. For that reason, I honestly think like if you're trying to train up and promote a sage to get like staves, because the main advantage that the unpromoted mages have is they can get staves on promotion, whereas both pre-promotes, Bastian and Calill, have knives instead of staves, so they will never be able to roll compress staffer and combat mage, whereas Tormod, Soren, and Ilyana all can. I think Ilyana's probably the most tempting one, just because she'll probably be a higher level than Soren when she joins. And even though her stats are going to be slightly worse than him, she just needs less babying. And that's kind of all, that's like her appeal. Asbel at home. Yo, that is such a rude comparison. Do not compare Soren to my goat. He's so bad. He's so bad. Like, he's abysmally bad. I will say this, right? Because him starting with D rank wind and a wind tome in his inventory does lead to, I've seen some people say like Soren's bad because wind is bad, and therefore like Ilyana uses thunder, which is better. It's worth pointing out all 3 mages can use all 3 weapon types, and like, yes, it's gonna be easier for Soren to get Tornado than Thoron, which is the highest rank, but there's not enough tomes for it to really matter. And the magic number is C rank. You want to get to C rank, because C rank is Siege Tome territory. That's where you get the 10 range spells, those being Blizzard, Blizzard, Bolting, and Meteor. And like, that's the main appeal of mages. It helps make up for their armored movement too, if you can attack 10 tiles away. So like, Soren is not locked to wind. Wind is the worst magic type, but you can just give him fire or thunder. Nothing is stopping you from doing that. Soren needs Graf Caliber. Soren just needs a Forged Thunder. Maybe we'll forge a tome for him and name it Graf Caliber or some shit. That is the other unfortunate thing, is that, like, tomes are the most expensive to forge because the way that forging math is calculated has to do with base stats. And so to make a 4 might, if you give a wind tome +2 might, you're doubling its might. So it costs more than giving +2 to an axe, where you are not doubling it. Like, if you give +2 to the iron sword, that's a +50%. Where +2 to wind is +100%. So +2 might on wind is more expensive than on iron sword, because it goes off of a, like, percentage formula based on how much you're adjusting it percentage-wise from the initial stats. So tomes are just so much more expensive to forge than any other weapon type because their stats are so low. And you can only forge the base tomes. You can eventually forge steel, silver, and throwable variants of lances, axes, and swords, except for no throwable swords. But you can only ever forge basic wind, basic fire, basic thunder, and basic light. So they're, like, in every possible avenue, they are just disadvantaged. I actually have a video coming out soon. By the time the unit review compilation comes out, it'll already be out. But I have a video coming out, I believe this Friday or Saturday, talking about Tellius mages and how just the deck is stacked against them. And unfortunately, like, even though Soren's gonna have the best stats of the Tellius mages, he's still going to have all the mage properties. And that's before you even factor in that, like, this is a game where you want to fight a bunch of people on enemy phase, and Soren is one of the frailest combat units in the game. I didn't read out his growths, did I? 45% of HP growth on an 18 base, that's fucking abysmal. 5% strength growth, so he'll always get weighed down. 60% magic growth, that's great, tied for the highest. 55% skill growth, so he'll have no accuracy issues. Oddly enough, only 40% speed growth. Like, that's actually pretty bad for what is supposed to be the fast mage, especially with an 8 base. That's, like, slightly better than Boyd, right? Boyd has... That's worse speed growth than Boyd! What the fuck? I forgot he was slow in this. I knew he was slow in Radiant Dawn. I forgot he was slow in this, too. That's so awful. 30% luck, 15% defense, 55% res. Mage on mage combat will happen. Goddamn, he's slow in this game too. I forgot. He just feels like he should be fast because he's a wind mage. Just give him 7 Draco shields. Is that easy? Yo, why didn't I think of that? That sounds like a video you made recently. Never mind, it's because I'm a Patreon. Yeah, subscribe to patreon.com/DannyDoyle if you want early access to a video. Is Tormod actually fast, or are they all snail core? I think Tormod is like... Let me pull it up. Tormod's got a 45% speed growth, so he's Boyd core. But Tormod's got his own problems. So yeah, mages are just like, they really are just armor knights. They've got armored movement and low speed, but then they're not bulky. They're frail armor knights. What's Calill's speed? I mean, it's fine. Like, she's a pre-promote. I believe, like, on average, at 26, Soren has better stats than her, but by, like, 1 to 2 points each. The main advantage to training Soren or Ilyana or Tormod is the staffing. But like I said with Rhys, I don't think staffing is, like, all that valuable. I don't think it's enough to justify the training of the mages. What's next is a Mia unit review. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is, I think, one of the more clowned on units in Path of Radiance, and, like, with good reason. She's not very good. So, Mia is, like, the classic female Myrmidon. High speed, low strength, sword locked 1 range, foot locked in a game where cavalry is great. Mia and the sexism slim sword description. Oh, right. It's like, It's lightweight. Favored by female fighters. Fun fact, I think this is the first character that we've gotten that is not weighed down by any item in their starting inventory. Because Titania's weighed down by the steel axe, and Gatrie's weighed down by the steel lance. But Mia has 7 strength, so... Girl power! Feminism! Girls get it done! She's pretty bad. She's pretty bad. Her focus is, like, doubling in order to deal damage. Technically Rhys. Oh yeah, you're right. Technically Rhys. I'm spreading misinformation. But yeah, she doubles to deal more damage, which is like pretty cool, I guess, except for the fact that everyone is doubling. Well, unless you're me and Oscar and Boyd got speed screwed. Her growths are also pretty abysmal. 50% HP, 40% strength, on top of that 7 base, 30% magic for some reason, 45% skill, 60% speed, which, like, that's her best growth, and it's not even, like, I mean, it's good, right? It's tied with, like, Soren's magic growth and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know, chat. 45% luck, 20% defense, 25% resistance. She starts with the skill Vantage, which means that she will always attack first, even on enemy phase. Swordmasters feel like the worst units for Vantage, because they've got low strength, and Vantage really only matters if you're killing the enemy before they can counterattack you. And they're stuck on swords, which are the 1-range weapons, so if they ever get attacked from 2-range, Vantage doesn't do anything for you. So it feels like just not really where you want to be, in terms of, like, a Vantage unit. She could, because Swordmasters get a crit bonus. She could, and I kind of want to do this, I kind of want to do a crit boost Vantage build. It's not good. Like, let me just be clear off the bat. It's not good. But I kind of want to give Mia the Wrath Scroll and do, like, Vantage Wrath Gaming. The problem is, because the crits aren't guaranteed, like, she sometimes will just not kill something and then she gets hit by the counterattack, and that's just unfortunate. But in this game, at least, you can Vantage from full HP, so she won't always die if she doesn't kill with Vantage. Like, that's kind of cool. Otherwise, she's just like, what if Ike was worse? Like, she is just, what if Ike was worse? No access to Ether, no Ragnell in Endgame, mostly worse stats as well. Like, her speed stat's gonna be better than Ike, which is, I guess, relevant, but speed thresholds in this game are low enough that I don't think it matters that much. And, like, Ike's speed is also decent. He's got 7 base and 55% growth, so it's not like Mia's zooming past him. She's just, like, slightly faster. Can you fit both Wrath and Vantage? I believe you can when you're promoted, because promoted infantry have 25 capacity, and I think Wrath is either 10 or 15. I don't have the capacity values memorized. 0 kills, 0 damage, 7 times on the bench. Yeah, the joke of Mia is next chapter, chapter 8, you get bonus experience for undeploying people. And so the Mia joke is that, like, she contributes 10 BXP for getting undeployed in chapter 8. But honestly, she's just not very good. She can't even really do the shove bot role particularly well, because she's got a weight of 6. So, for anyone who isn't aware, you can only shove people that weigh 1 more than you or less. So she can shove anyone that is 7 weight or less. So she can't shove Ike. I believe she can shove, like, Soren and Rhys right now. Yeah, 6. She can't shove Rhys? Why the fuck did Engage give Mia the shove command? She can't even shove people good. Like, the upside to being a lightweight infantry, or lightweight unit in general, is everyone can shove you. So, for someone like Soren, right, who's a combat unit, I mean, I don't think he's particularly good at combat, but he wants to be on the front lines. It's actually good that he's light, because people can shove him around. Mia, it's like, well, I mean, I guess you want to shove her into the battlefield, but she's bad. Rhys is jacked underneath the robes. DeviantArt told me so. At least she's not Lucia. Yeah, I will say this, she's better than Lucia. Like, she's definitely not the worst unit in the game. I can think of 2 offhand who are definitely worse than her, those being Rolf and Lucia. And like, Lucia is almost just strictly worse, right? She has the sword band. I guess on New Game Plus, but like, I don't give credit for starting inventory. I don't think you should. But yeah, that's Mia. Can I get a refund, please? So Ilyana is very similar to Soren, which means she has a lot of the same weaknesses, so she's not very good. She basically asks the question, are you okay with a slightly worse statted mage in exchange for not having to train up Soren from level 1? And like, I am. I think if I want to train someone to make them a sage, Ilyana's probably the best choice. Her growths are like decidedly fine. I think for the most part, they're all just worse than Soren's. Aside from strength, she's got 45% HP, 25% strength, 50% magic, 45% skill, 30% speed, 45% luck, 15% defense, and 50% res. She has enough strength that she will eventually just not get weighed down by most tomes, which is good. But her speed is like middling. I mean, Soren has bad speed too, right? He's got 40%, she's got 30% on 9 base. So like, mages are just slow. Mages are just slow. But she's fine. Like, if you don't want to deal with training Soren in the early game or giving him a ton of BXP, she'll be slightly weaker than him. Right now, she's slightly better than him. I guess ours, like, I mean, we just haven't been training him, right? But on average, looking at, like, their 26 stats, I like to look at the 26 stats because that's what level Calill joins at. So comparing them, she's slightly worse than Soren and slightly worse than Calill, but she'll get stabs, which is nice. Yeah, not much else to say. Again, I feel the need to emphasize because people obsess over what element they have the higher rank in. Like, she's got D rank Thunder and E in the others. She's not a Thunder mage, though. She can use whatever you want. Thunder is probably the best magic type. But you can just give her Fire and Wind if you're worried about Thunder accuracy moments or whatever. Which, like, it's the least accurate of them. 75 hit on L Thunder is a little cringe, but she has 10 skill. And so, like, it's fine. Calill is, like, the only mage with an actual speed stat. Yeah. Yeah, and even then, she's not, like, fast. She's just, like, faster. Consider that Soren is Ike's boyfriend. But consider Ilyana has Shade. Which will discourage enemies from attacking her. Allegedly. They still attack her if they can kill her, so, like, on the squishy unit, that's oftentimes just always. Thunder loses values because bows are effective against wyverns in this game. I don't think that matters at all. I mean, first off, Thunder is not effective against wyverns in this game, but you don't use Thunder because it has 2 times effective damage against dragon lagoos. You use it because it's got the highest might. Like, Thunder's got 4 might, Elf Thunder's got 7 might, in comparison to Wind has 2 might, Fire has 3 might. Like, Thunder's just the highest might of them, which is what makes it good. It has nothing to do with effective damage to dragon lagoos. Dragon lagoos are super rare. Thunder's not effective against wyverns. Yeah, I mean, like, it'd be better if it was, but it's not. I don't know. It's just a Radiant Dawn thing. I also, like, don't think it matters. Like, yes, it would technically be better, but, like, axes would technically be better if they dealt effective damage to wyverns. The axes are the best physical weapon because they have the highest might. Thunder's the best magical weapon because it has the highest might. Like, hit is very easily fixable in Path of Radiance, whether it be a hit support or a forge, or just, you know, the skill stat. Enemies have pretty low avoid. Or biorhythm, although she's got minus biorhythm. Effective damage is not real in Path of Radiance. Yeah, like, effective damage just doesn't fucking matter. It really doesn't. Let's start with the easier one to talk about. So this is Rolf. It would be shorter to say everything that's not wrong with Rolf, and that's like basically nothing. He has almost no good qualities. I guess he joins in the early game, right? His availability is not terrible. Congratulations, Rolf. He is a level 1 archer, so he's the training project, right? Joins, like, not super late, sort of Donald Corps, right? That kind of unit, Donald Ross type deal. Unfortunately, unlike them, he doesn't have good growths. So you might look at this guy and think, like, 5 strength, 6 speed. He must have really good growths. He's the 0 to hero unit. Let me just read his growths out for you. 60% HP, 40% strength, 20% magic, 45% skill, 50% speed, 40% luck, 30% defense, 25% resistance. His highest growth, aside from HP, which 60% is a bad HP growth, by the way. But aside from that, his highest growth is a 50% speed growth. He's not even Mr. 50%, he's Mr. less than 50%. And those are the sort of growths that you roll your eyes at on a Cavalier, but you're like, I'll use you because your class is good. Archer's not a good class. Like, bow locked and foot locked, a losing combination. Obviously, infantry problems, it's the same old. But if you're wanting to use an infantry, like, use an axe infantry, lance infantry, or even sword infantry before you use a bow one. Being 2-range locked means it's very hard for Rolf to find opportunities to do anything on enemy phase. And with 18 base HP, even if you have, like, a mage to fight at 2-range, it's not happening. Shove X equals 5. Yeah, he can shove, like, Soren. No, he can't shove Soren. He can't shove Rhys. Who does he shove? Wait, who does he shove? Mist, and that's it? Before promotion, he can shove Mist. He can't even shove Mia. He can shove Ilyana. He's not even a shove bot. He's not even a shove bot. Oh, it's so awful. It's so awful. I love this fucker. But he is in contention for worst unit in the cast. Like, the only other, like, viable worst unit is Lucia, and it all depends on how much you care about availability. I go back and forth, but today I'm in the mood that Rolf is the worst unit in the game. He's also my favorite. I fucking love this piece of shit. I will trade him up. He's part of the triangle attack. Yeah, the bow triangle attack. Oscar bows, Boyd bows, triangle attack. Snipers get a crit bonus. Woo woo. Yeah. No thank you. No thank you. Mist, on the other hand, is actually really good. She's a phenomenal unit. So she's a healer, right? And she's got worse healing stats than Rhys. Base magic of 4, joining several maps after Rhys with his base magic of 10, and a worse growth too. She has a 50% HP growth, 35% strength growth, 50% magic growth, 25% skill growth, 40% speed growth, 60% luck growth, 15 defense, 40 res. She's like a little bit worse at healing than Rhys, but not that much worse. She can't use mend, by the way. Like, that's unfortunate that she can't use mend, but it's whatever. She'll get there eventually. She'll get there soon. Not even eventually, just soon. The big thing is well, I guess there's 2 things going for her. The first is that she is allowed in the Black Knight duel, if you care about that. And training Mist is the easiest way to ensure you win the Black Knight duel. There's sort of a narrative online that you lose the Black Knight duel if your Ike is stat screwed. Capped Ike still has a very RNG chance to just lose the Black Knight duel because you have 5 turns to beat him before the tower collapses. The best way to ensure that the Black Knight duel goes in your favor is to train Mist to the point that she's bulky enough to survive fighting the enemy soldiers. Because if she can fight the enemy soldiers, then she can physic Ike safely, and it's all Gucci. But yeah, the main benefit, because I think the Black Knight fight is like very niche. I honestly don't care about the Black Knight fight. I usually just retreat it because it annoys me. I'll probably fight it in this playthrough just to show it off. But the real sort of payoff that Mist has is her promotion is Valkyrie. That makes her horse-mounted staffer. And aside from Valencia, who joins at the very end of the game, she's the only mounted staffer, which is really good. Being able to staff and then canto, or just being able to keep up and staff. Like, mend plus canto is nice. Physic without needing, like, shove support. Running forward with your horse and using a rescue staff. It's nice. Like I said with Rhys, you probably don't need too many staffers. Like, 1, maybe 2 is enough for basically every team. But, like, you know, she'll be good at staffing. She's gonna be worse at combat than Rhys because she uses swords instead of tomes, and like her strength stat lol. But it's not like Rhys is good at combat. Like, Rhys should not be doing combat, let's be so for real. So it's sort of, the argument is, would you rather have the high magic stat for like long distance physic or whatever, or the horse to keep up with your army and do canto stuff? Or both, like if you want to use both. So that's kind of her appeal. I think usually I prefer Rhys just because he feels lower effort. But getting a horse staffer is really nice, and like there's no reason not to use both of them. You get a lot of deploy slots. Even though I don't think you really need the extra staffer, a lot of people like it, and that's okay. I got pissed when I trained up Mist and found out she gets swords instead of tomes. I mean, I don't think you should be. I don't think... Yeah, she's bad at combat, but, like, tomes are a bad weapon type, too. She would be bad at combat even with tome access. Like, I'm not even lying. She's incredibly frail. Like, 2 base defense, 18 base HP, and bad growths in both of them. I think people harp on... And this is especially true in Radiant Dawn, where, because she uses swords and, like, the floret is physical... Oh my god, the amount of, like, floret is physical, Mist is trash takes is so ridiculous. Yes, Mist is not doing much with swords, aside from Sonic Sword and Rune Sword or whatever. But, like, Rhys isn't doing good combat either. Both of them are frail enough that you want to keep them off the front lines. It's one of those things that it's a feel-bad moment. I'm not trying to say you're wrong for feeling bad. Like, the first time you find out, oh, this unit with no strength stat gets a physical weapon type, that's a feel-bad moment, for sure. But it also ultimately doesn't matter, because most of the time she's not clicking the attack button. She really shouldn't be. And she shouldn't be fighting people on enemy phase like she just died. It's kind of like Safi. If you played Thracia, Safi gets access to light tomes when she promotes, but you don't have any light tomes available to give to her. And that feels bad until you realize, oh, Safi should be clicking a staff button every turn anyway, because she's got 18 HP. Her combats are so bad that it takes a few turns. Forge a steel sword, give her an arm scroll. Yeah, you can also give her, like, the sonic sword and arm scroll her up, and you can eventually get rune sword. The other thing is that, again, Path of Radiance enemies are so low quality that even physical sword Mist will be fine. Shoutouts to Casual Jacob's Mist solo run, which was not even particularly difficult. If you want a demonstration of how, like, ultimately it doesn't super matter what units you use in Path of Radiance, check out the Mist solo run. That is, yeah, that's a show and a half. But yeah, that's the two of them. That's the small children. Okay, with that taken care of, we can now actually do the Marcia unit review. So this is Marcia. She is, in many people's eyes, the best unit in the game. And I don't even necessarily think that's, like, wrong. I personally think Jill and maybe Titania are better than her. From a, like, LTC or speedrun perspective, you just dump everything into her, and, like, she goes brrr. But yeah, she's your first flyer, and she specializes in, like, speed. She has 55% HP, not great there, but 40% strength, 20% magic, 50% skill, 55% speed, 40% luck, 25% defense, 30% res. The growths do not seem great. Like, her growths and bases combined mean that her average stats are, I mean, just that, average. But, as it turns out, average is good enough with Path of Radiance enemy quality. And so when you bring the traits of not just being mounted, but being flying to the table, it opens up so much in terms of strategy. Next chapter is an indoor map, so it's not really like a great first impression for her. But after that, there's rivers to fly over, there's boat maps where she can go off of the boat. I believe she is, like, essential for some LTC strats on, like, fighting ravens before they get to your boat or whatever. Comparing Marcia's bases to Mia's is comical. I mean, they're not that far off, honestly. Mia's faster, right? Mia's 13 speed at base, I want to say. Yeah, Mia's faster. Marcia has 1 more point of strength. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's comical. I think they are closer than you would think in terms of the raw numbers. Except for res, I guess. Like, Marcia actually has a res stat, which is a rarity. But it's not... Because I guess the idea would be, like, if someone is going to be, like, the best unit in the game, you expect them to have stats that blow everyone around them out of the water. But it really is just being a flyer, and specifically your first flyer, that does things. If you want to, like, BXP dump someone, then you usually want to BXP dump someone who, because everyone's gonna, if you give someone like 5, 10 extra levels with BXP, then no matter who it is, they're gonna be dominant, right? Like, I've done BXP Soren stuff. I guess Rolf is the exception that proves the rule because he's still bow locked. But, like, I've done BXP Soren, I've done BXP Mia. You can turn any of the early game units into a second Jagan by just giving them 10 extra levels, right? So, when it comes to deciding who you're going to do that to, you look at qualities outside of just their stats, because everyone will have the ridiculous stats if you BXP dump them. And Marcia, being your first flyer, is the first one who, if you give that super BXP into, can actually take advantage of it in flying situations. Now, much like with the Radiant on Jill discourse, I think that there's sort of an idea that that is necessary for Marcia to even be salvageable. It's really not. She's still just got good combat. I compare average stats to Nephenee because at the same level, they've got basically the same stats, and they use the same weapon type in lances. And people love Nephenee. I mean, it's playable soldier bias, right? But I think it is an apt comparison because she joins 2 chapters earlier at a higher level, and actually has weapon rank, like D rank lances. The weapon rank is not a huge deal, but it's just an extra knock against Nephenee. But yeah, Marcia's just gonna have good combat. Her bulk is also, like, not as bad as you would traditionally think for a Pegasus Knight, in part because bows only do 2 times effective damage, but, like, 20 HP, 8 defense, it's not great, but it's, like, average for a level 5 unpromoted unit as well. Like, she's gonna level quickly whether or not you give her BXP. She's level 5 unpromoted right now, facing against enemies that are level 18, well, that's the boss, but, like, level 10, right? Level 6. She's gonna level at a decent pace. I once saw a fanfic with Hubert. Interesting, interesting. But yeah, Marcia just... Again, this is why talking about Path of Radiance units is so much more boring than any other game. I like this game more than like FE7 or whatever, but at least FE7 it's interesting because you get people like Florina who it's like, yeah, she's a flyer and that's awesome, but look at her stats. Whereas like in Path of Radiance, it really is just flyer equals good, Cav equals good, Jagan equals best, right? Like it's such a boring, because of how low quality enemies are, and everyone just has really average stats. Like, Marcia's just got fine stats. I guess the thing that holds her back, and why I personally like Jill better, is her strength cap is kind of abysmal. It's like 23 as a Falco. So in the late game, she struggles to one round. Struggles, she can't one round, but like no one can, HP values are high. But she struggles to like 2 round or whatever. And in a situation where enemy speed values are low enough that both Marcia and Jill are doubling basically fucking everyone, failing to one round with Forges is just like a little bit annoying. Full guard makes her valuable. Honestly, I don't think so. Like, the anti-flyer stuff has existed in every game. It's just that the archers aren't threatening even without full guard. And her stats are just good. Like, it's not to the level of like Pala FE3, but she's just got good stats. Like, you know, compare it to our blessed Mia, right? Compare it to Ike. Compare it to our screwed Oscar. She's just better than our Oscar right now. But even like comparing to Titania, right? Like, this is our Jagan, who we've fed levels to, and she's only got 6 more strength than Marcia, which, like, that's a huge gap, but, like, then you remember, oh, this is our under-leveled Pegasus Knight versus the Jagan who's already gotten 4 levels and is, like, a little bit stat-blessed. How is she to Boyd? Yeah, Boyd's pretty good. Class equals viability. Unfortunately, like, it's so annoying because Path of Radiance is the game where you don't dodge the elitists only care about cavalry allocations. Even FE4, which is like even more cav pilled than Path of Radiance, at least the cavs are interesting to talk about. They have stuff like, you know, Lex gets the Brave Axe and the Christmas cavs have their skills and stuff. Like, the cavs are just so boring to talk about in this game because they're all the fucking same. Anyway, Marcia's really fucking good. Don't let the haters get you down. I guess while we're here, we did get Lethe and Mordecai. So we do have a couple of more unit reviews to knock out. I'll start with Lethe. So Lethe and Mordecai are the first 2 Lagoos that you get, and in this game, Lagoos operate on a 20-tick gauge. When they hit 20, they will automatically transform into their beast form or their animal form, and when they hit 0, they will automatically transform into the human form. And this happens on both player and enemy phase, just whenever you hit the number. So it's a little bit different from how it works in Radiant Dawn if you've only played that game for some reason. Here it just happens automatically as soon as you hit the number. Every turn, the gauge goes up by 4 if they're in human form, and down by 2 if they're in animal form. And anytime they participate in combat, in animal form they lose 1, and in human form they gain 2. So you gain gauge faster than you lose it, but they will always lose or gain it, based on either doing combat or just like existing. As such, about half of the time, I'd say probably close to a third of the time, Lagoos are not, because you lose it at half the pace you gain it at. I would say about a third of the time, Lagoos are not actually functional, because in human form, they can't do combat. But in beast form, they get minor stat bonuses, and they're able to do combat with their weapons, which are just 1-range weapons. Claw's an 8 might, 90 hit weapon. That's like what, steel sword level, right? Yeah, it's steel sword, but more accurate, basically. So it's like a decent sword equivalent. And then Mordecai has the claw that's like a little bit stronger, right? Lethe is supposed to be the speedier of the 2 because she's a cat. Cats are speedy, whereas tigers are supposed to be close to armor knights, like slow and strong. But both of them really function, you know, I see some people compare them to like Lethe as a Myrmidon and Mordecai's an armor knight or that sort of thing. they really both just function like cavalry, because when they're transformed, they have 9 movement, which is the equivalent to a paladin. Titania also has 9 move, right? So this is advantageous for Lethe, because on turn 1, she transforms. Turn 1, she gains 4 gauge. So she starts every map transformed, and as such, for the first, like, 4 turns, she basically acts like Jagan number 2. She's got similar stats to Titania, especially when you factor in the bonuses she gets upon transforming. And she's got 9 move, but she's 1 range locked. So it's like she's a sword paladin, I guess you can think of it. And that's like pretty all right. As you go later into the game, Lethe is going to fall off. Both because, you know, you later get a ton of paladins who just are paladins for 100% of the time instead of like 60% of the time like Lethe is. But also because Lethe gains experience like a promoted unit, but unlike Titania, her combat is not so much better than everyone around her. It is gonna be better than everyone around her, but not so much better. So she just sort of like becomes eh. She also doesn't have like, she doesn't have terrible growths, but I don't think her growths are like stand out. Actually, her growths are pretty good. Looking at them now, 130% HP, 50% strength, 5% magic, 65% skill, 70% speed, 50% luck, 40% defense, 25 res. Yeah, those are good growths, actually. So I guess, like, the main thing is just having to deal with gauge stuff becomes more of a hassle the later you go, because while you can think of Lethe as, like, kind of a paladin, no Canto. That's a good point, no Canto, so it's not quite paladin, but 9 move, 1 range attacker is, like, it's still really good, and her stats are good for this point in the game. It's just, she can't use stronger weapons, like the claw, the sort of steel sword equivalent. It's like a steel sword forged for extra hit, and eventually your paladins will be using, like, javelins, hand axes, silver weapons, whatnot. Being locked at 1 range is bad for the same reasons it is for Ike and Mia. So even at their peak, like, once we hit the mid-game and it's just 1-2 range hell, Lethe is gonna be on the struggle bus. But I would say, especially early on when you don't have like a full squad trained up, she's a very good sort of crutch character as you think about it. I just want to read off her bonuses because it says she has 12 strength here, but she gets 6 strength on transformation. So it's closer to an 18 strength, 15 speed, 14 defense unit. She also gets 3 res and 4 skill. Like, her stats are a lot better than they currently appear. I'll highlight them when she's transformed, to sort of, like, show the difference, but that is, like, she really does just function like a pre-promoted, paladin who just doesn't have Canto and doesn't have 2 range. And that's, like, she's got better stats than Titania. She's just only able to use them about 2/3 of the time. But transforming early, I think, is definitely better than transforming late, because the most important portions of every map are the beginning of the map. And that's pretty good. Like, that's pretty good for her. Mordecai, her companion, is in the opposite boat. His gauge starts out empty, so he will be non-able to do combat during the early portions of the map. But as the map goes longer, he'll eventually transform. And he also has very fucking good stats for the join time. Accounting for bonuses, he'll have 22 strength and 11 speed. And 16 defense, 7 res, 12 skill. So his transform stats are, I would argue, worse than Lethe's, because he can sometimes struggle to double things. 11 speed is in that sort of questionable area, but if he doubles stuff, he deletes it, and he's very strong and very bulky. And much like her, he has 9 move when transformed, so rather than an armor knight, it's like a super boosted up armor knight. What if you had 17 celerities, right? His growths are also quite good, much like hers. 150% HP growth, 65% strength growth, 0% magic, 55% skill, 50% speed, 40% luck, 40% defense, 20% resistance. But he faces the same problem as Lethe in that promoted experience gain and eventually sort of falls off, both because of the stats, and more importantly, stuck on a weapon type. Again, sort of a forged steel sword situation. Once everyone else is wielding forged axes and silvers and stuff, it's like, well, why would you bother with the guy who's stuck on steel swords? He does have a piece of utility, though, that lets him contribute either transformed or untransformed, and that is Smite. Smite allows him to shove 2 tiles, and you'll notice he has 33 weight. When transformed, he has 48 weight. Mordecai is one of the few units who's actually capable of shoving cavalry, and he can smite them, so he can shove them 2 tiles. You see Titania's only 21 weight. Marcia over here is 22 weight. Once we get Jill, I believe Mordecai can smite Jill after a statue frag. He might need 2 statue frags. So while untransformed, he can shove people 2 tiles, and that's super helpful. I see someone in chat saying it's only good for LTC. I want to push back against that. Obviously, movement skills are good in LTC if all you care about is the low turn counts. But one, this is a game where your turn count does actually matter for the reward of bonus experience. And 2, even if you don't care about turn counts, just being able to extend a unit's movement range to allow them greater flexibility is such a huge boon. Titania can only reach a foe that's 9 tiles away from her. If you are able to shove her 2 more, she gets an extended movement of functionally 11. That can help to rescue, like, oh no, Soren got crit, and now he's at 1 HP, we need to rescue drop him out. Or very early on, in a couple of maps, we have to recruit Astrid, and Smite is basically essential for that, shoving Ike to get to Astrid before she dies as a green unit on enemy phase. There are just so many situations where getting a little bit of extra movement will help you even in casual play like what we're doing right now. I think one of the biggest sort of, and it's honestly a little bit frustrating, the biggest misconception I see is that if something is good in LTC, it can't possibly be good in casual play as well. Which, funny enough, that doesn't apply to, like, when something hyper-specific, like Ross water walking, is good in LTC, everyone's like, OMG, it's the best thing for casual play now, too. But something generic, like a unit having more movement, or a unit having good bases, being good in LTC, then the narrative comes up of like, well, I don't LTC, so it actually doesn't matter, so I'm gonna use someone with 3 move and terrible bases. Whereas, like, no, these are things that add to your flexibility, that give you extra options, and even if you are taking the map slow ball like we've been doing, just having that extra movement, having those extra options, removing danger that's farther away from you is always a good thing. Titania's good in LTC, therefore she's ass. I've seen, I think because Path of Radiance just got, like, re-released, I've seen such an uptick in, like, Titania bad posting. You know, be careful using Titania, she'll steal your experience. Meanwhile, the humble level 5 to 82 EXP Titania. But look, my team is still fine. Like, my team still has decent levels, despite the fact that we have been using Titania a bunch. She will not steal your experience. But yeah, Mordecai, basically, on the early turns, you have him smite people to help with the positioning, and then when he transforms, he becomes basically a, Cavalier, Swordlock Cavalier, and, he can still smite while transformed. Like, being able to smite mounted units is just such a boon. I think Mordecai's pretty slept on because his utility, it sounds a lot worse than it is. Like, oh, pushing someone 2 tiles? That doesn't seem like a very big deal. But in the game that gives you like 14 deployment slots, let's be so fucking for real. You're not gonna have 14 combat gods available every chapter. Mordecai will be more helpful than your fucking under-leveled Makalov will be most of the time. So, this is Volke. He is your first thief, and basically he's the good thief. He's the good thief. So, Volke has okay combat stats, and okay combat growths as well. 65% HP, 50% strength, 5% magic, 55% skill, 65% speed, 35% luck, 20% defense, 10% resistance. Decidedly okay. They are decidedly okay. Held back by the fact that his weapon type is knives. There are only 3 knives in the game. The knife, the stiletto, and I think it's like the dirk or something. They're all pretty bad. This one is 2 might, which means it is a stronger weapon than the Rolf could. But knives are very bad. Not only that, but as a thief, he's stuck with pretty bad caps, because he'll be unpromoted for most of the game. He has a story promotion. And his story promotion is later than Ike's. His story promotion is when you get a bunch of gold from defeating the Naysala map, so chapter 19? Then he promotes to assassin. As an assassin, he's also got bad stats. Don't let anyone fucking trick you. His combat stats in Assassin are awful. He gets access to lethality if you're willing to spend an occult scroll on him, and that's like a chance to instant kill, but it's bad. Like, don't do it. Yeah, combat, not very good, but that's not what he's here for, right? Like, he's here for stealing. He can steal unequipped items or weapons. People go crazy over this, because you can steal weapons, right? And so if a enemy has 2 weapons, you can steal their unequipped weapon. Let's just take a quick glance at all of the enemies on this map. Yo, we can steal this steel lance. Oh, wait, it's 13 weight. Aww. He only has 12 strength. Well, what else is there? Oh, there's no unequipped weapons on this map. That's gonna be the pattern. There's usually no unequipped weapons. However, if you have more speed than the enemy, which he's got 13 speed, this Armor Knight has, what, 10? So he has enough speed to steal. If you have more speed than the enemy, and more strength than the weapon weight, so I think he would need 14 strength to steal the Steel Lance. I might be wrong about that. It might be equal or lesser, but I think it's more. Then you can steal an unequipped weapon, and that's like some cool stuff. Like, there's some goodies you can get in the next chapter. I always like stealing the Laguz Slayer, and there'll be sometimes random enemies that'll have like a killer bow or something. It's nice to be able to steal stuff. Unfortunately, there's just not that many stealables. Unlike Thracia, where you can steal equipped weapons, there's just not that many options for Volke, but it's nice. The main reason you deploy him is there's maps with chests on them, and he can open chests. But even that, I think is overrated. It's crazy to say, but you get a lot of chest keys, and like 50% of the chests contain absolute garbage you don't care about. Like the Miracle Scroll, like fucking, I think there's a Counter Scroll. Like, there's a ton of chests that just have like, thanks, I fucking hate it. This map right here, okay, if I remember correctly, it's like a steel sword, an iron axe. It's like all generic fucking steel and iron weapons, and then like a statue frag, and I think this is an effective weapon? No, this is the statue frag. It's all, oh, this is the short axe, and this is a steel sword, and this is an iron lance or some shit, and this is a javelin. It's awful. It's like, so many chests are like, do we really care about that? Now everyone brings up, he charges you 50 gold for every lock he picks, which, yes, he does. That's not a big deal. 50 gold is nothing. And like, at the end of the day, right? 50 gold for a steel sword, it's cheaper than the armory. It's the deployment slot that, like, you're spending a deploy slot on him that feels annoying. But then, like I was saying with Lethe and Mordecai, once you get into the late game, you get like 14 deploy slots, and it's fine. I just don't think Thief Utility is like all that good in Tellius, because there's just not much you gain from it. Like, it's a might as well situation where, like, I might as well deploy him. Yeah. That's kind of all there is for that. I know you can steal some siege tomes later. You can't actually. I mean, you can technically, but you basically can't. So everyone gasses up stealing Siege Tomes. I should probably address the Siege Tome thing. Thank you for reminding me that people say that, because it is a thing that is technically true, but functionally false. What I mean by that is, in order to steal a Siege Tome, first, you have to trick an enemy into equipping not their Siege Tome. You can do this in 2 ways. You can... Oh no, I think it's only 1 way. Does silence unequip it? I genuinely don't remember. You might be able to silence them. I know sleep does not unequip weapons, so you cannot put an enemy to sleep to steal their weapons. Silence might, but I don't think it does. Someone in the comments correct me on that if I'm wrong. The main way that you would trick an enemy into equipping a weapon other than the Siege Tome is you have them attack with their other weapon, because usually Siege Tome users will have a Siege Tome, which is 3 to 10 range, or a regular tome, which is 1 to 2 range. And so the theory is you stick someone in 2 range, no one is in 3 to 10 range, they will switch to attacking with like Tornado instead of Blizzard, right? In practice, this doesn't happen for 2 reasons. 1, Siege Tomes are far enough away that they're gonna drain their tome before you're able to put someone there. But 2, even if you put someone in their range, Siege Tome users are not stationary in this game. In a lot of other Fire Emblems, if someone has a Siege Tome, then they won't move. But in this game, most of them move. And so if you put someone in 2 range of them, they'll just be like, cool, I'm gonna take 1 step backwards and still hit you with the Blizzard. And now the Blizzard is still equipped and you can't steal it. So like stealing Siege Tomes, technically possible, but it's just not going to happen without some obscure level of AI manipulation that just is not fucking worth it. Because the game gives you 5 Siege Tomes for free, if we count Purge. No, 5 before Purge. Because you get 1 copy of Blizzard, 2 copies of Bolting, 2 copies of Meteor. So like, you've got plenty of Siege Tomes. And that's before factoring in that Siege Tomes require Volke to have, what, 17 strength? FE9 Blizzard. FE9 Blizz. I spelled Blizzard wrong. Oh, no, 10 weight. Damn, they're not actually all that heavy. Okay, so ignore that last part. But everything else is bad. Everything else is bad. Kupo, thank you for the follow. Appreciate you. How is Volke's strength base? He's got 10 strength, or 12 strength, right? And then 50% growth. So like, and that's why Volke is the better thief compared to Zoth, is he'll actually be able to steal stuff. But like, I don't know. I just don't think there's that much worth stealing. But for the memes, reviews. So we just got 3 new characters, Kieran, Brom, and Nephenee. Let's start with the good one. Not just the best of them, but like literally the only one who's good. Kieran! Kieran is your 2nd Cavalier. He's an Axe Cav. And he has very similar stats to Oscar. This is about what a level 12 Oscar is gonna look like on average. Don't look at our Oscar. His growths are also like generally good. 60% HP is disappointing, but 50% strength is good. 15 magic is irrelevant. 50% skill, 40% speed, 25% luck, 40% defense, 30% res. And his bases are really solid. 11 strength, 12 speed. He doubles in either 1 rounds or comes close to 1 rounding a lot of stuff. And 10 defense, 30 HP means he's gonna stand up to a lot of physical punishment. His only real weak point is 1 resistance, which like, mages are not very threatening. Notably, if you instantly give him a Master Seal, his bases are just Titania with a little bit more strength, I think, or a little bit more... He's slightly better Titania if you just Master Seal him. Now, obviously, Titania's been around longer, like ours has gotten levels, yada, yada, yada. But it is, like, pretty cool that Kieran is just... He's got really solid bases. I think he's the best of the Cavaliers. Not by a huge margin, but a noticeable margin, just because he's always going to have the good bases, and he joins just on time. He also does have axes, which are the best weapon type, but once everyone promotes, everyone gets axes, so it's not as big a deal as I think sometimes people make it out to be. He's gonna have a better axe rank than other people, but weapon rank raises really fucking fast in Path of Radiance. You don't have to worry about weapon rank. So I think it's really just, it's fine. It's just fine. He starts with the Gamble skill. There's sort of a conspiracy theory that I buy into, that Gamble was meant to be Makalov's, and Kieran was meant to have Tempest. And that, I mean, I buy it, but it's not, you know, it's not guaranteed or whatever. I've seen arguments for why Kieran should have Gamble. Like, he does reckless maneuvers, and Gamble's reckless maneuvers. So, like, I can see it if you squint at it, but I think it makes more sense on Makalov. But Gamble's basically a nothing skill. He's just like a cav with good stats and a good weapon type. That's kind of all there is to it. Again, Path of Radiance units, boring. Cav good. Cav good, armor bad. Brom is a very fucking unfortunate unit. Obviously, he has the same downsides as, like, the mages and armors do, of just being low movement, low speed unit. But Brom is, like, he's supposed to be your sort of replacement for Gatrie, in the same way that Rolf is your replacement for Shinon, who temporarily disappeared. Unfortunately, we get Gatrie 2 maps after Brom joins us, right? So if you really want an Armor Knight on your team, just wait 2 chapters and you get Gatrie, who's just better. Like, he's just got better bulk, better strength, better everything. Meanwhile, Brom is just, like, fine stats? His growths are also pretty bad. 75% HP is good, 45% strength is fine, 10% magic, 50% skill is good, 25% speed is yucky, 20% luck is really unfortunate. 20% luck and a 4 luck base on what's supposed to be a tanky unit is absolutely abysmal. It means he'll face crit from most enemies, and, like, if an enemy crits him, yeah, it's not gonna do a ton, because he has decent defense with 13 base and 55% growth, but, like, Thunder Mages will wreck his shit, because they'll crit him and they'll just fucking crit one-shot him. But also just, it makes it so he's facing, like, the idea of a tank is you face a ton of enemies on enemy phase, and if you're facing crit on every single one of them, your bulk is just a lot less reliable than you would hope. He also just doesn't have any special traits going for him. I guess Water Affinity, in theory, is good because it's attack and defense, but in practice, since it rounds down, and, I mean, supports don't fucking matter in Path of Radiance. They really don't. So he's, like, the most nothing burger unit. Arguably, he's better than Nephenee, though, because at least he has D-rank lances. He can use a steel lance. Nephenee, where do we start with Nephenee? So Nephenee is like, give me a Marcia with nothing. Nothing? Nothing. E-rank lances. Abysmal bases. Like, her bases are worse than Marcia's, and her growths? Her bases and growths line up in such a way that, on average, Nephenee will be at around Marcia's stats at all points. But she's infantry instead of flyer, so she's just worse. 55% HP, 40% growth, 40% strength, 20% magic, woohoo, flame lance, 55% skill, 55% speed, 25% luck, 35% defense, 25% resistance. These are absolutely abysmal bases and growths, before even accounting for the fact that, like, so she's level 7, she's under-leveled, but not by much. Like, it's not like a Rolf situation, where at least you get a ton of experience. She's gonna get a little bit more experience than the rest of your units, but she's just, like, she's got stats that are, like, behind where, she's got stats that are behind where you would want a level 7 unit to have. She's got E-rank lances, which makes sense, because she's, like, not actually a soldier, she's a militiaman, right? But, like, it means she can only use Iron, Slim, and Javelin at base. Weapon rank is not a big deal in Path of Radiance. Within 2 maps, she'll get Steel Access, but it's just another mark against this unit who has so many tiny dings against her. Like, as an infantry, you're already working uphill against the Cavs, and then you've got abysmal stats and abysmal weapon rank, and you're not under-leveled enough to justify it, and your growths are not good. It's just so sad. The biggest thing she has going for her is Wrath, and Wrath is actually a pretty darn good skill. It adds a flat 50% crit rate to you if you're at half health or below. And that's huge. It also is worth noting that the 50% crit is calculated after Hoplon Guard. So against units with like a Hoplon Guard or Ashnard who's crit immune, you still have the 50% crit rate because of Wrath. Which is very funny. It's gotta be a glitch, but it's like, it makes it technically better than what it looks like. The problem is you have to be at half HP. For Nephenee, being at half HP means you're kind of on death's door. Like, her HP is so low to begin with. Her defense is alright, 9 defense, but then 35% growth is like, eh? She's not going to be able to take advantage of Wrath all that often, even once you invest into her. Like, she only has a 55% HP growth. It's icky. Wrath in a vacuum is very strong, but in practice, you only crit half time. Because the sort of argument is like, oh, we'll give her Vantage, right? Vantage Wrap, sweep things with the Javelin, let's fucking go. But if you're using a Javelin, you only crit half the time. If you're using like a Killer Lance and like the crit bonus, sure, but then you can't counter at 2 range. And again, it only takes 1 missed crit to then just die to getting counterattacked with that amount of investment. Like, I think Nephenee is one of the worst units in the cast. But soldier bias, cute girl bias, people will continue to glaze the shit out of her. Like, it's just not a fight that you're gonna win, unfortunately. Nephenee fans will continue to plug their ears and go la 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 when you point to, like, her average stats. Just everything she has working against her. Because soldier good. Excellent argument, however, Nephenee cute. You see, but like, there are people, because I know that you're joking. If you, the thing is, when you phrase it like that, right, it makes it clear that it's a joke. But there's people who will like tear you to shreds if you put Nephenee anywhere lower than like A tier on a tier list. It's the Path of Radiance is an easy game syndrome, where I didn't soft lock because I used a bad unit, therefore they can't possibly be bad. From the outside looking in, Nephenee seems eh. I'm not a soldier fan. Yeah, she just doesn't offer really anything. Like, in theory, she should offer Wrath, which is really good, but in practice, her stat spread just does not support Wrath in the way you would want it to. If a unit like Brom had Wrath, that would be a better, like, that would be another conversation, because Brom can, like, tank a bunch. But Nephenee, even with Night Ward, which boosts your defenses, I mean, first off, Night Ward is competitive, right? Like, the Cavs want it, but even with Night Ward, she's just not tanky enough to really take advantage of it. And unfortunately, Vantage Wrath just isn't reliable enough. Yeah. So Jill just forcibly recruited herself into our army. This is one of the best units in Path of Radiance. I also like her character arc. The first impression is bad, but I think that her character arc is really good. You know, your classic Zuko archetype, grew up in a fascist nation and got indoctrinated, but they seek redemption eventually. Classic Zuko archetype. But Jill herself is our second flyer. Much like Marcia, flight is really good. Jill focuses on strength and defense at the detriment of speed, luck, and skill, but her speed is good enough. This starting map makes her look slow as shit and inaccurate as shit because the enemies are super fucking fast, but the next map will make it more clear that, like, her base speed is not good, but it's not terrible either. And her growths are fine. 60% HP, 40% strength, 30% magic, 45% skill, 45% speed, 25% luck, 35% defense, 30% resistance. Actually, those growths are pretty bad. Those growths are actually pretty bad, all things considered. I guess it's just the fact that she's a flyer, and also her promotion bonuses are kind of goated. 5 HP, 2 strength, 2 defense, 2 speed, 2 skill, and an extra point of move, of course. It's just she's a flyer. It's just she's a flyer, and flyer is good. I think Jill, much like Marcia, appreciates BXP but doesn't need it. They get worse without it, right? Like, they need a little bit of extra babying. But you've also got the maps to do so. She joins with the Laguz Guard, which also really helps her bulk on this map. It's not displayed in the forecasts, but it cuts damage in half. So this guy actually only deals 6 damage total, because remember, Path of Radiance always rounds down. So it's 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, and he'll deal 3 twice, as opposed to 14. So that can make Jill, on this map where she can, like, fly to areas that only she and Marcia can reach, she can actually tank quite a lot of units. Just because of the Laguz Guard and her, like, decent base defense. She's getting doubled, but so was Marcia, right? So, like, at that point, it doesn't matter. So it helps a lot with her training arc. Next map's another good one for training flyers. Or you can just do the BXP thing. BXP thing is nice. On promotion, she gets axes. Axes are the best weapon type. And her strength cap is better than Marcia's. And those two elements, to me, are enough that she edges out Marcia. I think Jill is better than Marcia. But of course, Marcia has, like, the availability. And speed can sometimes be relevant for, like, really fast enemies, doubling them, especially on Maniac mode. Neither of them are hitting 1-round thresholds without crits or, like, very expensive forges. But yeah, they're both good. Like, run both of them, right? Flyers are good. Not much more to say about Jill. I guess she joins at kind of an awkward time. If you gave all of your early BXP to either Marcia, because she's the first flyer, or like Oscar, Soren, or Boyd, because you want to dump it as soon as possible, then Jill is in like an awkward time for Bex, because next map gives Astrid, who has Paragon, and makes better use of BXP than basically anyone in the cast because of Paragon and really good growths. And so in that situation, I can see like foregoing Jill just because it's hard to, or like foregoing her BXP dump just because it's like, it's hard to find room for it. I do still think she's useful at that time. Like she just needs more babying than perhaps you would like. Flight is useful in Path of Radiance. There's lots of rivers and forests to cross. Yeah, Flight is at a premium in Path of Radiance. Obviously, the boat maps sort of highlight it when Jill first joins, but even afterwards, like immediately after the boat maps, right, we get River map in the Fog of War, where Flight is good for flying across the river. Desert map, where Flight is at a premium. You want Flight. Then Oliver's Mansion, where flight doesn't really matter. There's like a couple of columns to fly over, no big deal. And then 4 swamp maps in a row, where flying over trees and swamp patches is super good. Then you get the wall. The wall, it's not really important. Then you get Nesala's map, really important there, especially if you want the Night Ring. Then you get Jill's dad's map, really important there. And then you get Without a King. And even though it's an indoor map, Without a King has a lot of rivers in it. I guess they're moats, technically. Then you get the Priest map. Doesn't really matter there. Again, there's a couple of columns. It can be useful if you care about that, but, like, it doesn't matter. After the Priest map is the Bridge map, and flight is huge there because of the pitfalls and stuff, but Jill can't really advance forward because she has to recruit Haar. Then after that is the map where you get Lucia and Bastian. There's a couple of rivers there that can be convenient to fly over. You're trying to rescue Geoffrey quickly. Then you go to the mountain map. Flight is huge in the mountain map because not only are you able to fly on the areas that non-flyers can't go on and fight like the boss, the Bolt Axe boss early, but also every tile on the mountain map lowers infantry and cavalry movement. Like, it's Desert Map 2.0. So you really want flight on the mountain map. After mountain map, I believe, is Clash. And there's a couple of trees in Clash, but not that much. It can be helpful, but it's mostly just a big open field. There's a cliff in Clash as well. And then after that is an indoor map. There's some columns, doesn't really matter. And then is the Laguz map, the Laguz Tower map. And there's a lot of trees to fly over at that point. And then there's Repatriation, where there's the walls and rivers and fountain and stuff. So weirdly, Path of Radiance, it doesn't have much terrain for infantry and cavalry to take advantage of. Like, there's not a lot of bushes. There's not a lot of thickets. There's some columns in indoor maps, but there's not too many. But there's a ton of terrain that flyers uniquely get to take advantage of by ignoring. For the most part, terrain is negative. It's like Chapter 17 and the early game are the only times there's terrain that you can take advantage of yourself. And otherwise, it's terrain like cliff, like ocean, the stuff that doesn't actually help you, but just stops movement. So, like, flyers are at an all-time premium because there's not even the downside of missing out on bushes and stuff, since forests themselves are no longer tiles you can occupy. Whereas, like, in GBA, the trade-off would be, and I think it still works in flyers' favor, but there is at least the trade-off of, like, well, because flyers don't get terrain bonuses, so you can, like, stick Oswin on a fortress, but you can't do that with Heath, right? Here, there's, like, no terrain that you care about. It's really sad. But it's happy for flyers, so we're happy about that. Unit recruit! Astrid time! Silly Astrid. Silly Ike Astrid doesn't have swords at base. It's a clever reference to giving her swords so she can be a ranger, smiley face. Don't do that, by the way. That's a bad idea. So Astrid is this game's, like, trainee unit, right? Horrible bases, decent growths, not great, but, like, better than Rolf. 45% HP is bad, but 40% strength is pretty good. 20% magic is eh. 55% skill is pretty good. 50% speed is pretty good. 40% luck is pretty good. 30% defense is, like, not great. 25% res is pretty bad. With these bases and those growths, I mean, heck, even just with these bases, you might think she's an awful unit, and that would be true, even before factoring in that she's bow-locked for the first 20 levels of her career. But Paragon, the silly little skill called Paragon, doubles your bonus experience. Paragon is one of the most broken skills in Fire Emblem history. Doubling your experience gain it's hard, if you've not played a game with Paragon, it's hard to express just how broken it is, especially since in the older games, like in FE9, FE4, etc., right? The way experience scaled is more friendly to overleveled units than in modern games where, like, Fates, it'll, like, completely cut off your experience. In older games, it's still, like, rough to be overleveled, but it's not so rough. And with Paragon doubling it, it makes it so that actually a unit with Paragon frequently just gets super overleveled and stays way ahead of the curve. So even though her growths are, like, average at best, I think once Astrid catches up to your army, she becomes phenomenal. She ends up ahead of the experience curve, and because this is a game with bonus experience, the way that she catches up to your army is simply by taking a lot of BXP. Now, that is a big investment. Astrid needs, I think, 10 levels. It comes out to, like, Astrid needs 8 levels worth of BXP, 12 levels of BXP. She needs 200 less than Makalov to promote, because BXP math is weird, but Paragon does double her bonus experience. And so Astrid makes very good use of a large amount of BXP, because every point of BXP she gets is actually 2 points, right? BXP math is weird. So it's not, because we're gonna get Makalov next map, and he's a level 10 Cavalier, and you might think, okay, well, Astrid needs 20 levels while doubled. Makalov needs 10 while not doubled. It's the same amount of Bex, but he actually needs more than her because of the way BXP works and Paragon works and how it all interacts. So she ends up, if you want to use Astrid, she ends up as basically a pre-promote that you have to spend a ton of bonus experience on. Because as a bow cav, she's not going to be good. Even if you get her, like, good stats, she's on bows, right? Bows suck. But if you promote her, you can give her axes or lances if you want, or swords if you're memeing. And even with swords, she'll be a lot better than with bows. But I would say, you know, give her axes, obviously. She also just has a really good skill growth. Like, her base skill is 6, which is decent for level 1. And her skill growth is 55%. She'll just not have accuracy issues because of she won't have accuracy issues because of, just, like, high skill. So give her axes, right? Paragon is the reason that I think Astrid is on the same level as, like, Oscar and Kieran. Because she needs more investment than them since she starts out super underleveled. But it's absolutely... I mean, it's not as much investment as you would think. And it's also absolutely worth it because she ends up ahead of the curve throughout the entire rest of her career. She just maintains her time ahead of the XP curve because she gains more EXP than others. So even when she gets over-leveled, like if she's 5 levels above other people, she gains the same amount of experience as them just because Paragon is just so busted. It is worth noting Paragon's 15 capacity, so if you want any other skills on her, like Soul, or Wrath, or Resolve, or, you know, there's some decent skills to give to Paladins. It does mean you have to take Paragon off of her, and that's something worth considering. Once Astrid gets to the point where she's, like, far ahead of everyone else, like 5 or 6 levels ahead, you can just be like, okay, Paragon's done its job, I'll cut it, I'll replace it with another skill, and that's fine. But it is also worth, like, keeping Paragon on her until she gets to 2020, if you really just want her to still always be ahead, right? So it's sort of like 2 different approaches to how you might want to take it. Just sort of depends on the mood, basically. But yeah, Astrid, very fucking good. In a normal playthrough, unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna get to use her unless someone pays to force deploy her, because I'm saving my BXP for the units that people are paying to force deploy, and I do think that if you don't BXP Astrid, she's kind of worthless. Even with Paragon, it's just such a slog to train her. And the payoff is just a Cavalier that's on the same level as Kieran, Oscar, and Makalov. Like, all 4 of the Paladins, their average stats are basically about even out. So the main thing that differentiates them is Oscar's the earliest, Kieran has the best base level, Astrid has Paragon, and Makalov has literally fucking nothing. But he's still a Paladin, so, like, it's fine. But yeah, that's just kinda, that's where Astrid is. Would you be willing to pay to remove Paragon? Sure, make me an offer. Make me an offer I can't refuse. I mean, Titania gets the kill. Unless, does Makalov? No. Lol. He doesn't die, does he? Was that... He literally lives at 1 HP. Yo, it's the miracle moment. It's the miracle moment. Anyway, let's talk about Makalov. First off, I mean, we've had the Makalov character discussion and a little bit the Makalov unit discussion, but there is always, like, the classic, you know, Path of Radiance tier list moment where people will put, like, all of their Cavaliers in A tier and then Makalov in D. And he had trash unit, absolutely worthless, because he stole my waifu. Cav number 5 is still a Cavalier, as chat has so boringly pointed out. This is, again, the fucking Path of Radiance units are boring. Although, actually, I think Makalov as a unit is more interesting than the, like, good because Cav or bad because infantry. Makalov is, like, salvageable because Cav, right? These base stats are not great. 9 strength and 10 defense. It's like okay for a level 10 cav. It's better than our Oscar. But it's not great for this point of the game. Makalov is underleveled, and he doesn't have anything to offer in exchange for being underleveled. You know, while Astrid has Paragon, Makalov has Tempest. Tempest is just, it's not worth it, right? Especially for a sword unit who doesn't have accuracy issues to begin with. And, like, his skill, a 7 skill on a, 45 growth rate? He's not, like, he doesn't benefit from Tempest. It only serves to hurt him. Makalov's growths are actually the best of all 4 unpromoted Cavaliers. 60% HP, 55% strength, 5% magic, 45% skill, 50% speed, 25% luck, 45% defense, and 20% resistance. Those are better than Astrid, Kieran, and Makalov's. So yes, you know, Astrid, the growth unit, she just has worse growths than Makalov. I said better than Makalov. It's Oscar, Astrid, and Kieran. Makalov has better growths than, right? So, like, if you want to argue, oh, which one of the Cavaliers is the trainee, I guess it's technically Makalov, but his growths are only marginally better. It's like, what, 15%? Well, 15% more strength than Astrid is good, but it's like 5% more than Kieran and like 10% more than Oscar. My point is that if the appeal of this underleveled cav is supposed to be he has better growths than the others, his growths are not good enough to be like, they're not noticeably better. I guess in comparison to Astrid, his, like, defense and strength, because those are the areas she struggles in. But, like, his speed, he's tied with Astrid, right? So his growths are, like, yeah, he's got the best growths of all of them, but they're not, it's not to the extent where it's like, whoa, these growths are amazing. So the main thing that holds Makalov back is just, he's underleveled, and Astrid probably just gobbled up all of your bonus experience, so do you really want to give it to another guy who doesn't offer any benefit? And, like, the answer is, if you're doing the Oops All Mounted run, Makalov has a place on your team. He'll probably long-term end up better than the Christmas Cavaliers, but, like, marginally so. So if you're trying to do, like, a quote-unquote balanced team composition, like if you're using cavalry and infantry, there's no reason to use Makalov on that sort of team. But if you're just doing Oops All Mounts, like, Makalov's gonna be good. Even being the Sword Knight is not a big deal. Like, I didn't really mention this with Astrid, but Bowlock isn't a big deal on her because once they promote, the Cavs just, they get good weapons, right? So he can just get axes. He'll be sword and axes. And the swords help him early on where his skill is low. If anything, starting with swords is, like, a positive. And then you use axes after promotion and you never look back. But yeah. People hate his character because he's a gambling addict and he's like, he does the scams and flams and stuff, right? He is very much a scumbag, and, like, in Radiant Dawn, there's the whole misogyny marriage thing, too. But I think, one, in the game full of racists, the hate for Makalov is absurdly overblown. But also, you know, don't let that impact the tiering. You know, Shinon is also a terrible person. People gas the shit out of Soren, and he's racist. So it is always very funny, the very funny eye roll moment of, like, 3 tiers between Makalov and the other Cavs. I think he's noticeably worse than the others because he joins underleveled and doesn't really offer you much in exchange. But, like, he's still a paladin. And at the end of the day, paladin good, just this paladin slightly less good. I forgot that football is incredibly popular. I mean, I don't like football. Makalov sucks ass as a character. I deploy him every map. Yeah, that's the, I mean, if we're gonna do the Makalov, like, discourse, I do think that people overblow how much he sucks. Like, he does scams and flams, but the idea of, like, he's the worst human being on Earth, Or what was it? Someone in the other stream was like, at least Shinon has people he cares about. As if, like, Makalov doesn't. I mean, that I even said in that stream, you know, Hitler had a wife. Does that make him a good person? But the idea that, like, we hate Makalov because he never faces punishment. He's conscripted into three if we count these brigands that he got conscripted by. He's conscripted into 3 different armies against his will. He fucking has a miserable experience. He does not want to be a knight. The fucking, the whole, like, he gets rewarded for, I guess it comes down to the same thing with Erica, where people put themselves in the character position and then just assume all characters behave like I do. I would want to be a part of Valencia's army, therefore Makalov gets awarded for being a piece of shit. Like, he's punished. He's just punished for something that you personally would like. But, like, Makalov doesn't want to fight. He just wants to lay around the house all day watching Family Guy Funny Moment compilations and gambling online, betting on the Super Bowl on, like, fucking various sports gambling apps, right? He's forced to take this position that for others is an honor, and for him it's his own private little jail. He's a man after my own heart. I'm gonna give him this tiny bit of EXP because I think it'd be very funny. It's very funny that he lives at 1. What sort of lunatic have you found now, indeed, Lethe? This is Stefan. It's kind of interesting that the previous unit we reviewed was Makalov, who kind of defies Path of Radiance's whole deal by being a cavalier who's kind of mediocre, but because he's still a cavalier, like, he's still mid at best, or mid at worst, rather. And then in Stefan's case, it's the opposite. He's a sword master, so sword locked, foot locked bad, but his stats are kind of fucking ridiculous, with the exception of luck, and res. Even his magic stat, for a physical unit, 8 magic base is ridiculous. But at the end of the day, he's still a 7-move sword master, so footlocked, sword locked, I wouldn't say bad, but, like, he can't rise above those traits. He's held back by his class. Like, they're kind of in the opposite situation, and they end up being basically equally as good, just for opposite reasons. Stefan gives you overkill stats. Like, comparing him to our stat-blessed Mia, Mia has been our best combat unit because this team sucks ass, and she has worse stats than him in every area aside from luck. Now, a lot of people brush off luck as a dump stat, and it is oftentimes a little bit less valuable than others, but when you've got as low luck as Stefan, you'll notice it. He faces crit frequently. It is sort of his Achilles heel, is like, he's not frail. You know, 12 defense, plus 3 from Fake Kadi, 38 HP. He's reasonably bulky. You know, he's not the bulkiest unit in the world, but he's probably bulkier than most of our current characters, which you would expect from a level 8 promoted unit, but still, like, a Swordmaster is traditionally frail, and Stefan defies that. However, he constantly faces low percent crit, and his bulk is at the level where getting unexpectedly crit can actually result in death. Whereas, you know, someone like Gatrie, right, or Brom, the Armor Knights, if they get crit, they go from taking 1 damage to 3 damage. Whereas Stefan, he goes from taking 3 damage to 9 damage, and that can add up and that can get you killed, right? You always want at least decent luck. Yeah, you do always want at least decent luck, you know? I feel like luck is the most thresholdy of all stats, because you have, like, bad luck people where it really sucks, and then you have decent luck people where you basically don't notice it, and then you have the super luck people who can, like, stare down a killing edge and say, bitch please, 0 crit. Anyway, his growths are also very good. Not that he really needs them, like with busted stats and a high internal level. He's got 70% HP, 50% strength, 20% magic, which again, for a physical unit, that's a very good magic growth. The Sonic Sword is genuinely a useful tool on him. 40% skill, 55% speed, 25% luck, that is again the unfortunate area. And then 35% defense and 30% res are not great. On other units, I would probably call those bad defensive growths, but since he's good at everything else and has decent bases in both areas, plus a really high HP stat, I think they're still decent enough, right? Like, within the context, it's fine. It's also important to remember he joins in this chapter in the desert map, right? We don't have anyone promoted right now. I think if we'd been spending bonus experience instead of having well, I guess we promoted Rhys. That doesn't count. None of our combat units are promoted, right? I think if we'd been spending bonus experience instead of me saving it to counteract chat sabotages, we'd probably have 1 or 2 promoted units, but the majority of your army is not promoted when Stefan joins. He's probably your first or second or third promoted unit. And like, that is a big boon as well. He gets promoted stats and he gets access to his mastery skill, which he comes with for free in Astra. Now, I think Astra is actually kind of a downside, because it can eat through your durability of like silver weapons, forges, the vague Kadi, obviously. But like, it's a cool kill effect, I guess, for people who really like it. Also, I guess worth noting, he has S-rank swords, so he like starts out with the S sword in his inventory. And Swordmasters get a crit bonus. If you're like really into crit builds, that's cool. He also has Heaven, which is like the best affinity, but he has 1 support partner, and it's Soren. So like, oh no, I think he supports Soren and like maybe one of the Lagoos? I think Mordecai? Either way, like, it's whatever. Supports are so fucking trash in Path of Radiance. Meg also has Heaven. That's why she's S tier, baby! But no, for real, like, you've seen our hit issues, right? Like, fixing them with Heaven is nice, but you can also fix them with Forges, which is why Affinities, like, it's just, oh. Path of Radiance support moment. But like, hey, focus on his raw stats. His raw stats, for the most part, are good. He supports Mordecai. Okay, yeah. I thought so. But yeah, it's overall a very strong package. I think that most teams want Stefan on them at least short to medium term, but he's also a unit you can reasonably take to end game. Like, I think he very reasonably can make it to end game. It just depends on like who else you're training and stuff, right? It's just free. It's just a free stat ball. And I want to highlight what he looks like, you know, prior to the boots. Prior to boots. So yeah, this is Tormod unit review. Tormod is another kind of interesting unit. We've gotten quite a few interesting units back to back to back to back, which is breaking the pattern of Path of Radiance having the most boring cast imaginable. But Tormod is our 3rd mage. He's our last unpromoted mage, so he's the last option to be a staff sage, since the pre-promotes both have knives. He's got decent stats for like a level 7 mage, you know, 10 magic, 9 speed, 4 defense. He's not doing much at this point in the game. Like, he's under-leveled, Nino-coded, one might say. Severely under-leveled. Like, for context, Ilyana joined at level 6, I'm pretty sure. And she joined in chapter 8. Yeah, Ilyana's level 6. 8 chapters ago, right? Tormod is severely underleveled, and his growths and stats, like, don't really reflect what you would expect from a sort of underleveled growth unit. His growths are, like, mediocre at best. 50% HP, 20% strength, 45% magic, 40% skill, 45% speed, 35% luck, 25% defense, 45% res. They're just not particularly good. But he does have one selling point, and that is celerity. He's the only unit in the game with celerity, and it boosts his movement by 2. Now, one of the most obvious downsides mages have is their low move. Most mages are 5 moves, 6 when promoted. With celerity, Tormod is 7 move, 8 when promoted, right? So as an unpromoted mage, he has the same movement as promoted infantry, 7 move. And as a promoted sage, he would have the same movement as unpromoted cavalry, 8 move. So like, that's kind of cool. Because of this, there are people who will say, you know, Tormod fixes the mage problem. But mages still suffer from a weak weapon type, generally low speed, like 9 base speed on a 45 growth, just ain't it, chief. And enemies having decent resistance stats, like especially enemies that you would expect to counter with mages like generals and paladins and stuff, just have decent res and you just don't deal as much damage as you would like. So I don't think Tormod solves the mage problem, and that's before factoring in the fact that he is quite underleveled. Like, we just got Stefan. To put in context, Makalov joined 2 chapters ago, and he's 3 levels higher than Tormod, and he's underleveled for his join time. Tormod is ridiculously far behind, and he really needs BXP to be functional. But he has that extra move. I mean, it's less move than mounted units, but it's extra. So, you know, that's something. That's something. In contrast, Muarim is weird. So he doesn't actually start out with a full gauge. He currently has the Demiband equipped. But he's our next Laguz character. And he's kind of interesting. He has the high con, like Mordecai, but no smite. So he can still shove cavalry pretty well, even while untransformed. And he has decent stats as a transformed unit. Like, you know, 23, 18, 15. These are good numbers. These are pretty good numbers. Unfortunately, like, he's level 9 promoted character, so it's the Stefan problem. Muarim is actually very similar to Stefan in that, like, he's got very good stats, but he's stuck in a bad class. He does come with the Demiband. You can give it to another Laguz if you want, but, because the Demiband keeps you transformed infinitely, but gives you stat penalties. So it lets you play around the gauge nonsense. And, like, then he's just basically a sword cav, right? Or sword paladin. But, like, you could give it to a different Laguz if you've hyper-trained up Mordecai or Lethe, I guess. He probably has the highest stats of the Laguz you currently have. And then you would give it to other Laguz as they join if you're rotating them out. I think he's good for a couple of chapters, but unfortunately he just sort of joins on the tail end of the point where Laguz stats are actually impressive. He has better stats than a lot of my combat units, but that's not going to continue to be the case for a while. So then his main role becomes the ability to shove cavalry, which is good, but, like, oftentimes not enough for a deployment slot. Unless you're doing, like, a very specific LTC strategy, or trying to do like a fast play strat or something. It's just not super useful, but, you know, he's got filler stats. He's fine. If you want to add him to your team, like, he has a bond support with Muarim, or with Tormod, so, like, that's cool, I guess. He's a guy who exists. He's a guy who exists. Devdan's also not very good in Radiant Dawn. That's the transition. So, I mean, getting the obvious out of the way, kind of gross that the anti-racism game has a blackface character as a slave, who talks weird and funky. As a unit, Devdan's, like, alright. He's just another soldier, right? Like, these are perfectly serviceable stats for like this chapter and next chapter, and then you get a bunch of units who are a lot stronger than him and he never gets fielded again. But like these stats are fine, I guess. His growths are also like decidedly existent. 75% HP, 60% strength, 30% magic for some fucking reason, like, and 7 base magic? Are we doing flame lance strategies? 40% skill, 35% speed, 40% luck, 45% defense, 25% res. Very all-arounder growths, and none of them really stand out as like, whoa! I guess 60% strength is kind of, whoa! Especially on a pre-promote, but he's got Serenity, so he can ignore Biorhythm, which most players ignore Biorhythm anyway. He is one of the units of all time to exist. There's unfortunately just not much to say about him. Yeah. There's just not that much to say about him. Heavy Steer's not a great starting weapon. I mean, sure, but you can trade him lances. Like, lance is the most common weapon type. You've probably deployed some lance users to trade one over to him, right? So it's really not a big deal. He exists, right? I think he's usually worth deploying in Chapter 17, because his stats are, like, just good enough. And there's, like, a route map and a defend map and stuff, and he'd be helpful there. But then in Chapter 18, even though you get more slots, you also get, like, a lot stronger units. So he's just really kind of forgettable. And once all your other units start promoting, like, because the thing is he's promoted. Once your other units start promoting, like, they just have better stats than him. So it's kind of like, why bother? Yeah, he certainly exists. I kind of wish he didn't. So, with them just sort of sticking out, this is the perfect time for a unit review. Because we have 4 new units. So Tanith always joins you at this point as a level 10 promoted Falcon Knight. And she's got really good stats. 16 strength is like a little bit low for a level 10 promoted unit. You know, we were just complaining about Oscar being strength screwed. Or Ike having 16 strength, right? But with 24 speed, and notably 32 HP, 15 defense, 13 res, she's a very good mixed tank. She also has phenomenal weapon ranks. She has A rank swords, B rank lances. She's basically the only magic sword user in the game, because the only other sword user with a good magic stat is Mist, but Mist starts with E rank swords, whereas Tanith, she can use the Ruin Sword and Wind Sword at base. And she's pretty good at using the magic sword. She starts with the Sonic Sword, right? And it's only 10 might, even though it's only 2 times effectiveness. Still, 20 might against wyverns is very good. Like, it's a good anti-flyer tool. She's just a strong pre-promoted flyer. I think you should basically always use Tanith. Especially because, like, look, we just got a bunch of new deployment slots, right? There's no reason not to field her. Just solid stats all around, and that's before accounting for Reinforce. I think Reinforce is probably a little overrated. Mostly because, in the same way as FE8, the disposable units aren't as big a deal, but they're not frail in the same way that the disposable units in FE8 are, right? So, Reinforce is a command you can use twice per map to summon 3 yellow units, 2 Pegasus Knights, and 1 Falcon Knight. Their stats differ depending on the difficulty, meaning that in Maddening mode, they're actually stronger than Tanith, which is funny. But basically it's just disposable bodies that you can have fight more people. And like, that's good. You can direct them. You don't get to control them, but you can direct them. It just increases your manpower, which is nice. You can also use them for, like, potentially baiting siege tomes, stuff like that. Like, there's some uses that they can do. The promoted Falcon Knight in particular is very strong because she has a silver weapon. She has a silver lance, I believe. But the unpromoted pegs are also pretty good. I think Reinforce is good. I think if Tanith didn't have Reinforce, she would still be an auto-include on most teams, because just her stats are good. And outside of Maniac mode, enemies are weak enough that, like, you don't need the extra manpower, but the extra manpower helps, because unlike the Phantoms in FE8, the pegs don't die in one hit, right? So they still fight multiple foes on enemy phase, and, like, counterattack and often kill people. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Tanith, phenomenal unit. Not the best of these four, though, because Reyson is this game's dancer. He's a flying dancer, too. He doesn't have Canto, but he's a flying 5-move dancer, so he can dance flyers a lot easier as well. He's also a Laguz, so he has the 20-gauge transform thing. He cannot use the Demiband to stay permanently transformed, but after 5 turns, or after you use the Laguz Stone, he transforms into a Heron, and he can dance 4-way, kind of like in FE4, right? Where he'll use the dance action, and instead of targeting a unit, just everyone standing adjacent for him, so all 4 squares get danced. And that is a huge boon. Now, obviously, being a dancer in Path of Radiance, I mean, dancers are always phenomenal, but since Path of Radiance has such a focus on movement, and you lack access to many movement tools, you get 1 pair of boots and the Night Ring, it can sometimes be hard to keep Reyson up if you're not actively, like, rescuing, shoving, doing stuff like that. But I think he's absolutely worth it, unlike the combat infantry, who kind of just offer the same role as infantry. You know, Reyson can dance someone and then get rescue dropped forward, and it's action economy negative, because you have 2 people rescue drop him, you gain 1 from a dance. If he's transformed, obviously it's positive, because it's -2 + 4. But even with it being action economy negative to rescue him forward occasionally, I mean, 1, it's positive on some turns, and 2, the quality of your actions is going to be different. If you've got, like, super trained Astrid, Titania, Kieran, and whatnot, and then under-leveled Makalov and under-leveled Marcia rescuing Reyson, getting an extra Titania is going to be better than having Makalov and, you know, under-leveled Makalov, under-leveled Oscar, like, do their actions, right? So, dancer good. 4-way dancer better. Also worth noting, he's super frail physically, but with 20 resistance, he basically doesn't have to worry about siege tomes. On this map, there's a blizzard tome that deals 0 damage to him. So like, that I think, because blizzard's effective against birds. 0 damage. So yeah, he doesn't have to worry about siege tomes, and that's good, but he dies to every physical attack. He also restores HP to adjacent units, which I guess can, like, sometimes come up in niche situations. How do you feel about the Laguz Stone turn 1? I think, it depends. It's a limited resource. You only get, I think, 4 total charges of Laguz Stones. And I think Reyson's the best user of them. But I also think it requires him to not dance anyone on turn 1. And I find that for a lot of maps, it depends on the map, right? A map like Clash, you usually, like, turn 1 is most often the most important. Turn 1, it's not most often. Turn 1 is often the most important turn on maps. So getting to dance on turn 1, I think, is oftentimes better than having a 4-way dance on turn 2, just because turn 1's so important. But there are maps where that's not the case. His joining map, this map, right? Turn 1, you don't fucking do shit. Turn 1 is walk up the hallway, because this is a FE6 Chapter 8 archetype, right? So, like, if you want to use the Laguz Stone for turn 1 on Reyson, yeah, what the fuck is he dancing for on turn 1 here, right? So it depends. It depends, right? But I think in general, just pick your maps. Pick what maps you think it's most important to use the Laguz Stone on, and do it. Yeah. Next two units are very similar. I'll go talk about Janaff first. They're both just filler units. Janaff is definitely the better of them because he starts out with a 16 gauge transformation. He's a flyer, and he's kind of like Lethe in that, like, he gets to exist for 4 or 5 turns, and then he untransforms and is basically useless. But he's got promoted stats, he's got cavalry movement, he's a flyer, and he can shove. And being a flyer who can shove is useful, but it's not too useful, especially because the birds have low weight, so he can't shove other mounted units, which is unfortunate. I think he's fine filler. There's a few maps where you want a filler flyer, and Janaff is a filler flyer. Also worth noting, you need one of Janaff or Ulki in order to get the Night Band, which lets you give a unit without Canto. So Janaff being the better of the two birds means that he's probably better at that task. His stats are good, but the thing about him is, like, I compared him to Lethe, but Lethe had promoted unit stats at a point in the game where your units were not promoted. Now everyone's promoted. Janaff just has on par stats, and that's pretty unfortunate. Ulki is the same boat as Janaff, but a worse transformation gauge. He starts with 5 out of 20, which means on turn 1 he gets pumped up to 9 out of 20. So he does, without any assistance, he will not transform until turn 2 is 13, 3 is 17. Turn 4, God, that's awful. I guess I should point out that they've got, like, corresponding skills. Increases hit, increases dodge. Cool, who fucking cares? But yeah, he's just like, what if Janaff had a worse transformation gauge? Their stats are a little different. Like, ooh, he's got more strength, but less speed. Ooh, more speed. Like, Janaff's also just got better stats because he'll double things that Ulki doesn't double. But, like, at the end of the day, the biggest defining factor is the gauge. Ulki just has a bad gauge. The filler unit who doesn't get to fucking do anything for the first 4 turns is not a good look. At least he's a flyer, but you just got Tanith. You've been training Marcia and Jill. Like, it just feels like too little too late, right? Also worth noting that, like, beaks are 7 might weapons with 1 range lock. So they're basically just, like, bad swords. Whereas you can give, like, a forged steel lance to Marcia, right? I don't know. The Hawks are not very good, but they're also not very bad. They're just middle of the road, right? It's peak filler unit moment. You can cap stats here. So Janaff comes with max strength and Radiant Dawn. Is that true? I don't think that's true. Let me pull up RD Janaff. 32. No, so Janaff's strength cap is 19. And if you cap his strength in Path of Radiance, he has 18 strength. He also just doesn't need transfer bonuses because he's already really good. But yeah, he has 16 strength compared to a 19 cap. Maybe you're thinking of Ulki? RD Ulki. 14 strength. No, Ulki's got less strength. Damn, Janaff is just, like, better than Ulki in both games, ain't he? Yeah. God, Radiant Dawn, Janaff, and Ulki are good. When we eventually play Radiant Dawn, I'll be able to glaze them. So yeah, where is she? All the way down to the bottom. Calill is here. Calill is this game's first pre-promoted sage. And she's arguably, I would say, the best mage in the game, by a pretty significant amount. Purely because you don't have to waste experience training her up. She statistically has, like, slightly lower stats than Soren would if you trained him to 26. I believe Soren would have, like, 1 more magic and 1 more speed or something. It's such a marginal difference. But it is worth acknowledging if you're, like, a super min-maxer. FE9, Soren, 26. So yeah, Soren would have 2 more magic and 1 more speed. But everything else is lower. Like, he has less defense, equal HP. So yeah, Soren has better stats. Ilyana and Tormod have worse stats if they're trained up. Obviously, Calill doesn't have, like, Shade and Celerity if you care about those. But the big thing she doesn't have is staff access, because you can promote the other mages and give them staves, but Calill has knives instead, so she's purely a combat mage. I guess also worth noting, with the speed lead that Soren has, Calill has 8 strength, whereas an average Soren will have 3 strength at 26. So Calill is faster when holding, like, Thunder, right? So arguably it's just the 2 points of magic that Soren has, and he's, like, slower when it comes to actual speed. And then the others are obviously, like, they're statistically worse than her. Soren doesn't even have speed because of weight. Yeah, I realized that, I think, at the same time you did. Because I was gonna say, her strength is, like, it's better than the other mages, and the idea is she's supposed to be good with knives, but, like, lol, 10 attack power, no thank you. She's not good at using knives, like, it's just not good. But yeah, she's, I think she's the best mage just because, 1, statistically, she has the highest stats at this time. And 2, you don't have to pay, or you don't have to invest in her. Training up the other mages, they all start, like, pretty under-leveled. Tormod's obviously the worst of them, because he joins so late. But Soren and Ilyana are also kind of obnoxious to train up. Now she can kill mages with knives. She's, like, legitimately, because people say that, legitimately it's more damage if you just use a tome instead. 12... Or, sorry, this is 11 more magic, plus a higher might weapon. With Thunder, she has 26 attack versus 10 attack. Even though mages have more res than defense, it's not enough to make up for that difference. She will legitimately deal more damage to mages with a tome than with a knife. The other advantage she has is she has higher weapon ranks. So she can use all the siege tomes at base because she has B rank. And I do think this is genuinely an upside, although it's worth acknowledging, it's not actually that hard to get your mages to Siege Tome rank if you're, like, conscientious about it, because there's only C rank. C rank is all you need. So, like, it is definitely an upside, but if you wanted to use Soren, Ilyana, or Tormod, they get D rank in every weapon type automatically on promotion. Getting from D to C is not that hard. BBB is wild. It is very good. It is very good. But it's not as good as it appears because there's no B rank tomes in the game. So you need to get to A rank anyway, right? Like, tomes are so fucking weird in this. Use Stiletto instead. Even with Stiletto. Stiletto's like, what, 4 might or something? I'll pull it up. I'm telling you, using knives is a fucking trap. FE9, Stiletto. Or, like, it would be if, you know... If they made any attempt to, make them look good. Stiletto is 8 might. So again, 8 might on 8 strength, that's 16 attack power. Once again, she's gonna do more damage with an Thunder, even against high-res enemies. Because mages, yeah, they have more res than defense, but it's still not as much. It's 8 might. Yeah, but it's still less attack than Thunder. Unless you have a 10-point difference between defense and res, it's still better to use the tomes. And tomes also help to build rank. Tomes can be forged, whereas knives cannot. And tomes can be used at 1 to 2 range, whereas, like, if you lock into a knife, you're locked into 1 range for enemy phase, which, like, is most of the game. It's effective against armor. Is that true? I'm pretty sure that's misinformation. Oh no, it is. That is true. Damn. Learn something new every day. I don't care. I don't care. Using your physical weapon against an armor knight when you could use a magical weapon instead is very big-brained. Knives have aura points. You've confused them with light magic. An easy mistake to make, but light magic is actually the one with aura access. So this is Tauroneo. He is very much defined by his class. Because these stats are all right. 13 speed is suspect. And I believe his growths are like, he's a shower, not a grower, right? He's not gonna really get better in that regard. But 22 strength, 22 defense are incredibly solid. You don't need that amount of bulk in order to survive in Path of Radiance. The enemies are pretty weak, but it's still appreciated. I still like it. And of course he has Resolve. Arguably the best skill in the game. It multiplies your speed, skill, and strength by 1.5 when you're at half HP or less. And considering just how bulky he is, again, that 22 defense, even at just 24 HP, he's gonna survive for a while. So, like, in theory, he should be a pretty good unit. And, like, I've made use of him in quite a few runs. Very useful for just, like, soaking up a ton of damage, replying with, you know, a spear or a javelin or whatever, dealing a decent chunk of damage, but he's never gonna double. He usually gets doubled, but oftentimes it's 0 times 2. The problem is he's a general. 6 move, low speed, it just ain't it. His res is decent. 14 res for a general is pretty decent. So, like, he doesn't get shredded by mages, but fighting too many of them does fuck him up. Although they can be useful for putting him into resolve range. Overall, though, it's just 6 move in a game dominated by Cavaliers is not where you want to be. Like, unfortunately, we are back on the... If we're doing Path of Radiance unit reviews, they kind of just are state the class, good or bad class, right? We had a few interesting units with, like, you know, Makalov, Tormod, Stefan, stuff like that. But we're kind of back to the boring stuff. And unfortunately, generals just aren't very good in this game. Also, generals are swords and lances, which is an interesting combination, but is unfortunate because axes are the best weapon in the game. So it's just not where you want to be. But hey, you know, Resolve is very good, and if you want to use Tauroneo, there are certainly worse meme units to use. The fact that he just starts with good bases means, unlike someone like, you know, Mia or Tormod or whoever, who you have to invest in, Tauroneo requires 0 investment to be good. He just sort of shreds through foes. Well, not shreds through them. He chunks them down, but he shrugs them off, I guess would be the thing. But he's also stuck at 6 move. He's also stuck at very bad speed, and, you know, even his strength, 22, it's not bad by any means, but it's not enough to kill because he's not doubling. He will never double. 30% speed growth, by the way. Why are axes good in this game? They have the highest might. They have the highest might, and accuracy is not an issue because enemy avoid is so low that, for the most part, with the exception of, like, enemy sword masters, you've got perfect accuracy even with axes. So the only difference is the highest might. And axes have access to 1-2 range with hand axes. That's why they're the best. But yeah. Tauroneo's alright, but he ends up near the bottom of, in my opinion, he's, you know, a low tier unit just because his class sucks, which is unfortunate. Alright, now we have Ranulf, and now we can do the Ranulf unit review. Ranulf's pretty alright. Ranulf's pretty alright. He is yet another filler unit Lagoose. Unfortunately, he shows up just way too late for that role to be, like, particularly useful. While transformed, his stats are better than this. because he will have 25 strength, 21 skill, 20 speed, 22 defense, and 9 res, right? So those are his bonuses when he's transformed. But he's also stuck on 1 range. He's stuck dealing with the transformation gauge, and it's a pretty inconvenient one. Starts at 10, so he gets 14 on turn 1, 18 turn 2, and transforms turn 3. Not the end of the world, but it's inconvenient, right? And at this point, just having a sword paladin, like, locked to a weak, basically an iron sword, is just not good enough anymore, even with Ranulf's good stats. And with the Demiband, obviously, he takes a penalty, if you give him the Demiband, so it's just annoying. Overall, he can be useful filler, but it's at a point when you probably aren't in the market for useful filler anymore. So we're probably not going to use him. He one-rounds enemies. Does he? Enemies in Path of Radiance are very bulky. Like, he'll one-round the unpromoted ones, but promoted enemies, I doubt it. 44 HP and 11 defense? Even when he doubles them, he's not one-rounding the warriors. Enemy cats. Enemy wyverns. Like, he'll one-round the unpromoted enemies, but that's not impressive. Better than Liar? Liar's not in this game. Liar's not in this game. But yeah, I think he's just too little too late. I will say this, I think he's sometimes shit on a little bit too much, because if you're in, like, an Iron Man gone wrong or whatever, he is a good filler unit. It's just, you know, we're past the point in the game where filler units are useful, but he's not on the same tier as someone like Nephenee or Brom, where they can't even really take the filler role. Like, he can take the filler role, you just gotta deal with transformation, and it's just not really worth it, right? Brom is god tier, what do you mean? I mean, our Brom is unfortunately our Brom and Nephenee are getting fielded. Oh god, so this is Haar. Haar is routinely overrated in Path of Radiance because he is a god in Radiant Dawn. And I think people just associate, you know, he's a pre-promoted wyvern. They remember that he's great in the sequel, so he must be good in Path of Radiance, right? He has less strength than Tauroneo, less defense than Tauroneo, less HP than Tauroneo, and only 17 speed, which is only 4 more than Tauroneo. This guy doesn't double fucking anything. He's a flyer, so I do think he's better, but he is very much, like, the definition of a filler unit. His speed and skill are the most shaky stats, for sure. His accuracy is going to be a little bit questionable, even in Path of Radiance. And his speed is... he's gonna struggle to double stuff. Like, even just looking at the enemies he's next to, right? He doubles these guys, right? He won't double the Paladin. He doubles the Cavalier. So he doubles unpromoteds, because these guys are unpromoted, right? Yeah, they're unpromoted. But even then, like, he doesn't double the Myrmidon, right? So he struggles. He comes with the Brave Axe, and he kind of leans on it, because he's gonna struggle to double promoted foes. And more, we're gonna be running into almost exclusively promoted foes. Don't get me wrong, I think he's good. Like, I do think he's a good filler unit, but, like, mid-tier at best. He's not dying. Yeah, he won't die. Not dying isn't a high bar, though. Most Path of Radiance units shrug off enemy attacks. Unless, again, you're somewhat like one of the mages, right? Or, like, Mist, Nephenee, that sort of thing, right? I mean, Nephenee's got equal defense to him at this point with the Night Ward. Does the Brave Axe impact people's thoughts on him? I don't think so. I literally think it's simple. You know, he falls into the same camp as someone like Ike, right? Where people remember how good this unit is in the sequel and just conflate the two of them. Conflate their performances, right?
And it happens in the opposite direction as well. Marcia sometimes gets overrated in Radiant Dawn because of how good she is in Path of Radiance. That sort of stuff. Poor Ilyana. She died. She died a long time ago. She died in chapter 17.
So, unit reviews. Bastian is our final sage. Just like Calill, he's also got knives instead. 12 strength, but like knife moment, right? Yay, 20 attack. He does more with tomes usually. He's worse than Calill, like not only because he joins later, but also he just has worse stats and is a higher level. But he can still use every siege tome. He does corrosion, and there's a funny strategy you can do where you use siege tome with corrosion to try to break other siege tomes. Normally using siege tomes against siege tome users isn't very good because they have good res. But Bastian can gamble and try to use corrosion to break their siege tomes. It's more of a meme than anything, but it's really his only claim to fame, because otherwise he's like a second but worse version of Calill that you deploy on Clash and never again. Sage just isn't a very good class in this game. You don't really need more than one siege tome user. Especially outside of Clash, because Clash you have so many deployment slots, it's like might as fucking well, but otherwise, like, what are you doing, right? He also can't use bolting, which is unfortunate because bolting is the only siege tome you get 2 of, so it limits him. Like, I'd prefer if he couldn't use Meteor or Blizzard, because you get 2 boltings, but you only get 1 Blizzard and 1 Meteor. It's just unfortunate. Although, speaking of unfortunate, Lucia might be the worst unit in the game. Also, why is she racist? Why is she racist? Like, it makes sense that Jill has a Lagoose Guard, but what the fuck is this shit? Lucia, do you have something to say? Swordmaster's a bad class. Lucia has a bad join time. Like, we're near the end of the game. This map, next map, Clash, Black Knight map, Animal map, end of the game. There are 7 maps left, including this map. And you're gonna field a 15 strength Swordmaster? Are you kidding me? 1 range locked, foot locked, sure, but like the real killer is her stats are garbage. Compared to our Mia, and Mia's a bad unit. Mia's just better in every regard except for like what? No, it's literally everything. And Mia's a bad unit. Lucia's genuinely like, it's either Lucia or Rolf for the worst unit in the game. I think it's Lucia, but like, come on. She only has 3 more strength than Bastian. Yeah, but she uses a real weapon type. You know, so it's a little bit better. But yeah, she's just garbage. Like, she's just straight garbage. Worth noting, you do need to keep both Lucia and Bastian alive if you want the Amity, but like, Alincia is also garbage in this game, so it's like, who cares? I mean, we gotta do a unit review for him anyway. So this is Geoffrey. He is the final paladin in the game. He's pre-promoted, level 11. His stats are like alright. Any trained paladin will have better stats than him. So like, if you trained up Oscar, Kieran, Astrid, or Makalov, they're gonna have better stats than him. His weapon combo of lances and swords is also, or lances and bows is also like a little bit you know? Lances are good, right? And he has enough rank for the Brave Lance. He has A rank lances, actually. But otherwise, like, Paladin good. His stats are fine. And he has Paragon. So even though, like, Makalov, Astrid, Kieran, and Oscar will have better stats than him overall, he catches up. He sort of stays ahead of the curve. I think he's fine. Chat seemed to imply earlier that, like, Joffrey's awful or whatever, but, you know, his biggest problem is that he joins near the end of the game. Also, this first map is awful for him because the mountain terrain slows down cavalry a lot. So that's, like, a very bad first impression, but, like, on Clash, he's useful. He's really just only useful on 4 maps is the problem. Like, there's only
there's not much of the game left, right? But his stats are fine. They're not great, but they're fine. This is Abwime Erasure? The fuck is Abwime? What are you even talking about? So why is he a berserker and not a regular warrior? I don't know. Why is anyone anything, right? Like, he's a berserker. He also kind of sucks. 21 strength is good. 20 speed is not as good. Worth noting that, like, his stats are somewhat good enough, you know? He's got better strength and speed than Geoffrey, but he's in a worse class, so I sort of have higher standards for infantry. And both of them are gonna struggle on the speed front. But Largo really struggles defensively. With 10 defense and 3 resistance, even though he has a cushy 52 HP, he ends up getting like 2-rounded and 3-rounded very frequently, which is super unfortunate because the next few maps are all very enemy dense. And his speed is low enough that, like, fast enemies will double him, and he struggles to double medium speed enemies, right? So that further adds to, like, the bulk problems. I also think having a lot of HP and low defense is the most unfortunate sort of bulk, because it means, like, you can't heal him to full as easily. So he can, like, get attacked, then you heal him up, but then he dies anyway because he, you know, he wasn't healed to full. He's, again, a fine filler unit for, like, Clash. Sort of in the same camp as Bastian, where it's like, I would always deploy him for Clash, but probably never after that. It's funnier he's the only unit not to show up in Radiant Dawn. Yeah, because they removed the Berserker class. Although, honestly, I think more units should have just not shown up in Radiant Dawn. Like, there's a lot of units where it's like, why are you even here? Especially the late joiners, right? I don't know. It's sort of how I feel about FE12 and FE10 cast, like, the cast bloat of, like, did we really need to bring back everyone from the previous game? But that's sort of a different topic. Largo, he, like, exists, and that's it. Like, he's got nothing going for him other than, like, not even big strength. Like, this is, like, decent strength. Again, these stats are better than Geoffrey's, but Geoffrey's on a horse, right? And Geoffrey has Paragon, right? Largo kind of doesn't have anything going for him. Oh, but the crit bonus, 15 crit is nothing. Just like to preempt that. But yeah, Largo do exist. At least for now. He will probably die at some point. Holy shit. Okay. Before anything else, let's do an Ilyana unit review. She's bad? Is that the whole unit review, right? So she's, I guess she's an Est, right? Like, FE9 Ilyana. Yes, she's a promoted class, but, like, these stats are not promoted stats, and she's level 1 at this point in the game. That's kind of underleveled. Like, she's not on the same level as Nino, but I think it's accurate to call her an Est. Her growths are also, you know, kind of Est core. 60% HP, 30% strength. She's never gonna do fucking damage, especially because her personal weapon sucks ass! 9 might brave weapon. Off of 9 strength stat, right? But 80% magic growth, 45% skill, 40% speed, 60% luck, 25% defense, 35% res. So the magic's the big one, but, like, hey, I think that's the highest magic growth in the game. And she turns into, like, a pretty good staffer. 12 base magic is not great, but she's a flying staffer. The biggest problem I think she has, I mean, she's a game over condition, right? And she's pretty frail. Even with the Amity defense boost, like, a lot of units will just one-round her at this point. She's not fast enough to avoid double from everything, right? Like sword masters and shit. Which is, like, sad for a Pegasus. But, sure, she can staff pretty okay. Physic, rescue, she's a flyer too. There's only 3 maps that she's available on. She's available on this map, she's available on the next map, and then she is forced to sit out from the map that would be most useful, because it's the one with trees on it. She's forced to sit out of the one map where a flying staffer would really help, and then she's available on the final map. I think she's, like, fine, but the availability is awful, and she's just a staffer in a game where staffing isn't great. Probably worth deploying on final. Probably worth deploying next map as well. Like, probably worth deploying every map that she exists. But, like, I don't know, if you've trained up Mist, Mist is almost certainly better. How is our Mist? We haven't really trained her that much either. And she's got 6 more magic, right? And a better staff rank, because what is her staff rank to start out? Oh, she's got A, so she can use Physic at base and Rescue. That's good. No Ashura staff, but, like, you know, whatever. If you trained up Wrist or Mist, which you should have, you have it anyway. Doesn't it hurt to have another... Oh, it doesn't hurt to have another fit. Yeah, I thought you were... I got confused at first. I thought you were saying that there's a downside to her on endgame. You do get a different cutscene. There's actually a cutscene difference depending on if you deploy her on endgame or not, but nothing gameplay-wise. But yeah, I think she's pretty bad, like... But you could do worse, right? You could be fucking Enna or something. Availability is her biggest problem. So, Enna! She's actually force deployed, I think? No, she's force deployed. Okay, if Enna is alive, she's force deployed on the final map. But if she dies here, obviously she's not, right? It's a lot like Myrrh in FE6. But Enna's a Dragon Lagoose. She's the first and only red dragon you get. She has Renewal, Miracle, and Boon. Boon in particular is useful because it can heal people, like restore sleeping units. And there's some sleep users on this map. In Maniac mode, there's a lot more, but there's some sleep users. In general, Enna is, I mean, so like, you know, Enna is the punishment for the fact that we lost the Black Knight. So she's worse than the alternative, Nasir. She's the growth unit. She has worse transformation bonuses. I'll get her transformed so you can see. But this is what she looks like transformed. I think this is probably just the easiest way to show it off, right? This is what she looks like transformed. These stats are, like, pretty alright. Remember, though, stuck on 1 range, stuck on Lagoo's gauge. She deals, like, 3 damage to Ashnard, if even. Let's see, 35 attack versus... Ashnard's got, I think, 30 defense? So she deals 5 damage. 19 speed is slow. Yeah. Worth noting, she can one-rot Ashnard with the Wrath Resolve combo. Because she and Ike are the only, well, and Nasir, are the only characters that can deal damage to Ashnard before you defeat Ashnard the first time. The Royals can do it, but the Royals can only do it in, like, after you've already proven you can beat him, right? Give her Wrath Resolve. Yeah, I mean, only if you give her Wrath Resolve, the best skill combo in the game. We could. Like, that would be kind of funny, I think. But in general, I don't think she's very good. Mostly because she's around for 2 chapters, and, like, the job she's supposed to do, killing Ashnard, she does not outpace his renewal. Like, you have to have her and Ike work together. She needs a Javelin PRF. But, like, compared to, you know, my Bjork unit, she has better stats. And even if you give her the Demi-Band, which will nerf her stats, she's got still pretty good stats, aside from the speed, which is a problem. And luck, which is a problem. But hey, you know, Miracle with 14 luck, smiley face. Renewal and Boon are fine, though. They're good. Again, it's mostly underwhelming, not because, like, on this map, she's fine. It's underwhelming because against Ashnard on the final map, she performs poorly. But, you know, what are you gonna do? That's the punishment for failing the Black Knight fight. Nasir unit review. I mean, look, we can do the Nasir unit review without Nasir on screen. Nasir is slightly better at the job that Enna can't do very well. That's the Nasir unit review. If you get incredibly lucky, you win the lottery, then you get Nasir. People say... Yes, turn 5.
I guess we go for it. If we ether twice in a row, we win. Or you can cheat with save states. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. Well, we die. Well, we die. Get, like, defense or something? But yeah, basically Nasir sucks. Or rather, Nasir's like, you know, he sucks because Anna sucks, right? He's better at being Anna, but he's still just not good at fighting Ashnard. My sort of pet peeve is people, it's because they're quoting fucking Mecha too, but people say like, oh, actually Anna is better than Nasir because if you get Anna, it means your Ike is too weak for the Ashnard fight. But if you don't get Anna, if you get Nasir, then your Ike is strong enough for the Ashnard fight. But that's a load of malarkey. Ike doesn't fail the Black Knight fight because you got unlucky. Or Ike doesn't fail the Black Knight fight because he's weak. Ike fails the Black Knight fight because it's an RNG dependent fight. Anna is worse than Nasir because she is the punishment for failing the Black Knight fight. The sort of backwards logic of if a capped Ike were like actually capable of reliably beating the Black Knight, then maybe that backwards logic would make sense. But it doesn't because it is all RNG dependent. Like even a capped strength Ike needs to proc ether twice, and the odds of doing so are incredibly low. The biggest way to boost Ike's odds, like, the funny thing is, the biggest way to boost Ike's odds of success against the Black Knight is not to train Ike and make Ike stronger. It's to train Mist, because you can't take your time in this fight. After 5 turns, the fight ends and the tower collapses. Nasir shows up. And we just get the cutscene that you get from fleeing, right? So, versus Ashnard, there is no timer. You can just take as many turns as you need healing. And Ike's gonna be able to wear him down, whether you go with Aether or Wrath Resolve. Ike's equally competent at taking, or not equally competent, like obviously it's better to go with Wrath Resolve, but an Ike that got Anna didn't get Anna because his stats were shit. He got Anna because you rolled bad RNG. Anna can't do what Mecha says she can do. Well, no, Anna, like, again, Wrath Resolve Anna can run round Ashnard. But that's not Anna doing it, that's Wrath Resolve doing the heavy lifting, right? And Wrath Resolve Nasir can also one-round Ashnard. Thanks for sticking around. This is my current tier list of Path of Radiance units. It looks a little bit different than the one I have posted on YouTube from a few years ago. Most notably, I have Jill as top 1 now, and I fully eliminated the E tier, therefore merging A and B together, which, I'll be honest, I probably should have done from the start, since I had like 2 units in each tier. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.